Chapter 1507. Icy Snow frowned. I've already said that this is my late husband's legacy. How can I give it to you? In order to avenge her husband, she had been traveling all over the country to search for Murong Jingwei. Not long ago, when she passed by Cangzhou, she paid her respects to Hu Yidao and deliberately dug out the icy moon saber buried in her husband's grave. She planned to use this saber to kill her enemy and avenge her husband. Moreover, the Hu family saber technique would be even more powerful when executed with this saber. Hu Fei was also growing up, so how could she give this saber to someone else in the future? Then don't blame me. The man in black sneered. He had already made up his mind. As the saying goes, the sky is high and the emperor is far away. No matter how high Song Qingshu's martial arts were, it was impossible for him to know what happened thousands of miles away. At most, he would kill them to silence them. The man in black's figure flashed and instantly attacked the two women. Icy Snow and Xia Qingxing were already prepared. They raised their sabers and swords and faced him. Icy Snow had already learned ancient Tomb Sect's supreme martial art, Jade Maiden Heart Sutra, and also learned a part of Nining Sutra. Xia Qingxing had been by Song Qingshu's side for a long time and received several pointers from him. Her martial arts improved even more, and the two women were already among the top experts in the world. If it weren't for the fact that the man in black's martial arts were close to the 5 ultimate skills, they would have long defeated him if they worked together. The more the man in black fought, the more alarmed he became. One saber technique was upright and imposing, while the other sword technique was abnormally strange. When the two of them worked together, they learned from each other's strengths to make up for each other's weaknesses. Their might was more than doubled. Although his martial arts were far higher than any of them, he would need at least hundreds of moves to win against them when they worked together. At that moment, the man in black suddenly knitted his brows. He jumped out of the battle circle and stopped attacking. Instead, he looked to the west. Icy Snow and Xia Qingqing stood back to back and watched in that direction with rapt attention. They saw a slim girl with a veil over her face leading a group of fierce-looking people on horseback. They were obviously the people from Class 1 Hall, led by Li Qinglu. Seeing that mysterious man in black, Li Qinglu couldn't help but frown. She learned about Icy Snow's whereabouts from Yalu Sui. Then she went all the way to the east side of the city. Who would have thought that there would be another expert here? At this time, the black-robed man was also bewildered. He stood in the same place with his hands clasped behind his back. He didn't attack anymore. Although he was proud of his high martial arts skills, he wasn't stupid enough to be the fisherman who benefited from the fight between the sandpiper and the clam. He had made up his mind not to attack until he had figured out the origin of this group of Xixia people. Song Qingshu, who was far behind Li Qinglu, also recognized Icy Snow and Xia Qingqing. He couldn't help but be surprised and overjoyed, especially Icy Snow. It had probably been more than a year since they last met. However, he was not in a hurry to greet them. This time, he had come to Shangjing City in secret. Now that there were too many people, it was not convenient for him to show himself. Let's see what the Xixia people are up to first. When he thought that Li Qinglu and the others were obviously here for Icy Snow, Song Qingshu became even more puzzled. You guys can continue, we are just passing by. After the initial shock, Li Qinglu smiled sweetly and pretended to leave. Whether it was the black-robed man or Icy Snow, no one believed her nonsense. Seeing that she couldn't fool the other party, Li Qinglu stopped and said to the black-robed man, "May I know why you are here?" She could tell that the black-robed man was very strong, so it was best not to provoke him. "May I know why you are here?" the black-robed man asked in a low, muffled voice. Li Qinglu smiled and said, "This lady has just bullied a friend of mine. My friend is magnanimous and forgave her, but I have to bring her back to apologize to my friend." She recognized Icy Snow's hairstyle and knew that she was married. Moreover, she couldn't call her little girl like the black-robed old man because of their age. Song Qingshu curled his lips. What magnanimous? It was obvious that Yalu Sui couldn't defeat Icy Snow. As for asking her to apologize, it was just an excuse. Only a ghost would believe it. But why does Li Qinglu insist on looking for Icy Snow? Song Qingshu pondered and said nothing. The black-robed man snorted coldly. It seems that we are here for the same purpose. Why are you hiding? He naturally didn't believe Li Qinglu's nonsense. Li Qinglu smiled sweetly and didn't feel offended. First come, first served. Since you came first, then you should go first. She could tell that both parties were fighting just now, so she obviously didn't want to get involved. The black-robed man sneered. I'm old and need a rest. Let you young people do it. Xia Qingqing was furious when she heard the two of them treating them like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. However, although she was angry, she wasn't stupid. She knew that both parties were experts in martial arts, so she couldn't use force. She could only use her wits. We are from the Golden Snake Camp, and this is the wife of the Golden Snake King. If you dare to offend her, the Golden Snake Camp won't forgive you. On the side, Icy Snow was embarrassed. She thought, I'm nominally the widow of Big Brother Who. Why did you say that I'm Song Qingshu's? Xia Qingqing stuck out her tongue. She was too embarrassed to say that she was related to Song Qingshu, so she had to push Icy Snow out. Good sister, I'll come to you to ask for forgiveness later. Xia Qingqing hurriedly whispered in Icy Snow's ear. Icy Snow bit her lips, but she couldn't get angry at her. She knew that this was the wisest course of action. Now, she could only hope that Song Qingshu's name could intimidate the other party. Song Qingshu, who was hiding in the dark, felt as satisfied as if he had eaten a ginseng fruit. He thought, Qingqing is a good girl. She knows how to use her man's name at the critical moment. The black-robed man's eyes flickered. Previously, he decided to take action because he was confident that he could completely subdue the two women and that the news wouldn't spread. However, with such a large group of people from Western Xia present, he knew that he didn't have the ability to deal with all of them. Therefore, he decided to temporarily retreat. Golden Snake King? Is he the newly conferred Prince of Qi? Li Qinglu suddenly snorted coldly. She recalled the scene where she was played by the opposite party outside Linnan City. Even though her face was covered, one could still see a layer of redness on her cheeks. It was unknown whether it was because of shame or anger. He's just a king of a mountain. Why will my Western Xia country be afraid of him? Li Qinglu snorted coldly. Guards, capture these two women for me. She had always looked calm and collected. However, she became impatient the moment she heard Song Qingshu's name. So, she directly ordered them to take action. Unexpectedly, Duan Yanqing and the others looked at each other. They didn't move. Instead, they stepped forward and whispered to her. Princess, the man's surname Song isn't someone to be trifled with. Why don't we just let it go? The four evildoers had fought with Song Qingshu several times. In the beginning, they were still able to exchange blows with each other. But later on, the opposite party had left them in the dust. Now, they couldn't even see Song Qingshu's taillight. So, they naturally couldn't bring themselves to oppose him anymore. What are you afraid of? Li Qinglu said angrily. The Western Xia country and the Golden Snake Camp are thousands of miles apart. There are also several countries in between. Are you afraid that he will lead his troops to attack us? Beside her, Yi Ernyang said with a wry smile, I'm not afraid of him leading his troops, but his martial arts are superb. What if he comes to Western Xia alone to take revenge? Li Qinglu snorted coldly. Then he will walk right into the trap. Not to mention the hundreds of thousands of soldiers of Western Xia. There are also countless masters of Class 1 Hall. Moreover, there is also the matchless old princess. Why should we be afraid of him? Beside her, Yunzhong opened his mouth but didn't say anything. He cursed in his heart. Although the old princess's martial arts are high, she may not be a match for the man surnamed Song. Of course, the old princess was omnipotent in the eyes of the Western Xia people. So, he didn't dare to say this in public. If you don't take action, do you want me to do it myself? Li Qinglu finally couldn't hold back. There was a hint of coldness in her tone. Duan Yanqing and the others looked at each other. After all, they worked for Class 1 Hall. They had no choice but to take action against the two women. In the dark, Song Qingshu frowned. He picked up a few stones and was ready to help secretly. Suddenly, he thought of something and looked back not far away. Everyone in the field clearly sensed that something was amiss. They all turned around and heard the hurried sound of hooves. A group of chitin cavalrymen rushed over and surrounded them in the field in a few breaths' time. The leader of the cavalry was a handsome young knight. He had a scholarly air about him, and he didn't look like a general who had fought on the battlefield. Instead, he looked more like an elegant and modest gentleman. Song Qingshu had already recognized that the leader of the cavalry was Yelu Qi. He recalled the conversation between Yelu Yisin and Xiao Shimu. It seemed that Yelu Qi had been promoted to be the commander of all the palaces. At such a young age, he was in charge of the emperor's personal army. His future was really limitless. "General, what do you mean?" Li Qinglu hadn't seen Yelu Qi before, but she recognized that they were Liao's cavalry. Therefore, she didn't panic at all. "Who are you?" Yelu Qi asked with a frown when he saw the strange clothes of this group of people. A member of Class 1 Hall came forward and answered, "We are the envoys of Western Xia. This is Princess Yinchuan." "Western Xia's envoys?" Yelu Qi frowned and said, "According to what I know, the Western Xia envoys should be in the insignia courtyard. Why are they here?" Li Qinglu and the others were speechless. They had deliberately returned to the insignia courtyard and then sneaked out to capture icy snow. They didn't expect so many things to happen. Yelu Qi continued to observe. He was shocked when he saw the man in black. Judging from his attire, he could tell that he wasn't a good person. When he saw Xia Qingqing and Yinchuan, he couldn't help but be surprised. "Madam Yuan, young Master Yelu." Xia Qingqing also returned the greeting. Yelu Qi and Xiao Feng had helped the Golden Snake Battalion to resist the Manchurian Qing's encirclement. At that time, they had interacted with each other and naturally recognized each other. Yelu Qi wanted to say something, but after some hesitation, he waved his hand and said, "Guards, take these people back." Li Qinglu and the others were immediately furious. "We are the Western Xia envoys. How dare you arrest us? Aren't you afraid of affecting the diplomatic relations between the two countries? We are in a critical period now. Someone will investigate whether you are the Western Xia envoys when you return." Yelu Qi paused and seemed to be explaining to Xia Qingqing. Now that the Song Kingdom's envoys have been robbed and killed, the emperor is furious. He has dispatched all the imperial palaces to investigate this matter. During this time, all suspicious people inside and outside the city must be arrested and interrogated. Please forgive us. Surrounded by a group of cavalrymen, Li Qinglu looked at the crossbows in their hands and snorted. In the end, she gave up resisting and said, "Humph, I will definitely make you give me an explanation later." Xia Qingqing and Icy Snow looked at each other and didn't resist in the end. After all, in the face of so many fully armed cavalrymen, it was useless to resist. Moreover, with their relationship with Yelu Qi, it might not be a bad thing to be taken away by them. However, what surprised everyone was the man in black. Judging from his attire in broad daylight, it was obvious that he was a criminal. They all thought that he would rush out with his martial arts. Therefore, at least half of the attention of Liao's cavalrymen was focused on him. However, no one expected that he didn't resist at all and calmly allowed them to put shackles on him. Chapter 1508. Song Qingshu didn't plan to make a move now. Although Liao's cavalry was a little troublesome, it was just a little troublesome for him. The reason why he didn't make a move now was that the commotion would be too big. Unless he killed everyone present, he wouldn't be able to hide his identity. He didn't want to see a series of chain reactions after that. He sighed inwardly. Sometimes, he couldn't help but envy the online novels he read in his previous life. Which of the male protagonists didn't conquer the world with a single sword? They didn't need to care about any conspiracies at all. It was really embarrassing for him to be restrained in this world. However, Song Qingshu also understood that his goal was to unify the world and not to defeat all the experts in the world with a sharp sword in his hand. There were many times when he had to make choices and weigh the pros and cons. In his opinion, it wasn't a wise choice to rescue Xia Qingqing and Icy Snow under the watchful eyes of the public. Instead, he would wait until they were brought back to the prison and rescue them in the dead of night, without anyone knowing. Anyway, the leader of this group of cavalry was Yelu Qi, and both sides had a friendly relationship. Presumably, He wouldn't make things difficult for the two girls during this period. After everyone was taken away by Liao's cavalry, Song Qingshu quietly followed them all the way to the official residence where all the palaces were stationed. The relevant officials examined everyone one by one. Li Qinglu and the others naturally claimed that they were Xixia's diplomatic delegation, while Xia Qingqing and Icy Snow said that they were here for vacation. As for the man in black, he didn't say anything. It could be assumed that the most suspicious person was this man in black. But when his mask was removed, only an ordinary face was revealed. Even the relevant officials who were deployed by the imperial palace couldn't tell who he was. Finally, after a round of discussion, they decided to put these people in prison first and investigate their backgrounds. In particular, they didn't dare to slight the group of people who claimed to be from the Western Xia country's diplomatic corps. Song Qingshu took this opportunity to sneak into the prison. He knocked out a jailer and impersonated him. Not long after, the group of people was brought in one after another. After all, the people stationed in the Summer Palace were worried that they were really envoys of Western Xia. Xia Qingqing's and Icy Snow's rooms were the next best, and Yelu Qi was the one who took good care of them. As for the black-clothed man, he was thrown into an ordinary cell. However, he didn't seem to mind at all. He was very calm. Hiding in the dark, he thought, this person is really strange. I wonder what his trump card is. Song Qingshu was now dressed in the uniform of an ordinary prison guard, and his face was purposely smeared with dust. These were all important people, so why would they pay attention to a prison guard like him? Except for the black-robed man's unexpected calmness, Li Qinglu and her companions were also calm and composed. After all, they were envoys of the Xixia country. The only trouble was to explain why they sneaked out of the Xianhui courtyard. On the contrary, Xia Qingqing and Icy Snow were the most apprehensive. Although Yeluqi had told them in private that they would be released quietly after the commotion died down, they were always worried that something might happen while they were in prison. Song Qingshu was secretly amused. He thought that after nightfall, he would rescue them as soon as possible so that they wouldn't be worried. Not long after, an official stationed in the Summer Palace respectfully released Li Qinglu and her companions. Obviously, they had verified Li Qinglu's information. We are very sorry for offending Your Highness this time. Please forgive us, Your Highness, considering that this was an accident. Where's Yeluqi? Why didn't he come in person? Li Qinglu snorted coldly. She was a dignified princess. Naturally, she was angry to be locked up here. The official said awkwardly, Lord Yelu has entered the palace to meet the emperor. He really can't split himself, so he asked me to convey his sincere apology to Your Highness on his behalf. Hearing their conversation, Song Qingshu, who was in the dark, almost laughed out loud. He didn't expect a gentleman like Yeluqi to also learn to play tricks. Li Qinglu was obviously aware of this, but unfortunately, there was nothing she could do. She could only leave with a gloomy face. At this time, various sounds came from the prison where the black-clothed man was. Song Qingshu looked in the direction of the sounds and saw several officials beginning to interrogate the black-clothed man. After all, no matter how one looked at it, he was the biggest suspect. Unfortunately, no matter what the officials asked, the black-clothed man closed his eyes and kept his mouth shut. This made the officials angry. Stubborn fool. Torture him. Let's see if your mouth is stubborn or your bones are stubborn. At this time, the black-clothed man finally opened his eyes and looked coldly at the official. I advise you not to do this. I'm someone you can't afford to offend. The official was so angry that he laughed. You're just a prisoner. How dare you speak so arrogantly here? Beat him up. A cold light flashed in the black-clothed man's eyes, as if he couldn't suppress the anger in his heart. In the dark, Song Qingshu was suddenly shocked. From the beginning to the end, the black-clothed man's expression didn't change. At first, he thought that he had this kind of poker face, but now that he looked at it carefully, he guessed that the black-clothed man had changed his appearance. The art of disguise was actually very common in Jianghu. However, in the whole world, only Azu and Song Qingshu could disguise themselves as whoever they wanted. Because Song Qingshu's internal energy was divine, he could also use qi to change his body shape, physical characteristics, smell, and so on. Therefore, he could be said to have surpassed his master. As for other people in Jianghu, the art of disguise was very crude. Often, they could only change their own appearance so that the enemy couldn't recognize them, but they couldn't disguise themselves as the person they wanted to. This person can't be Murong Jingyue, right? Looking at the black-clothed man, Song Qingshu felt that it was more and more possible. Now that the jailer was about to execute him, he could take the opportunity to test him. Stop! At this moment, the door of the cell opened, and a group of people walked in. The person in the lead was wrapped in a cloak, but from her slender body, it was obvious that she was a woman. Although the cloak covered most of her face, her smooth and round chin was revealed. Her fair skin matched with her delicate red lips, and it was obvious that she was an extremely beautiful woman. However, Song Qingshu's attention was not on her at all, but on the person behind her who looked like a guard. This person had a square face and wide eyes, and his eyes were bright and full of expression. It was obvious that his internal energy had reached an extremely high level. What the hell, why is it him? Song Qingshu originally thought that after experiencing so much, he had already cultivated to the realm of being able to remain calm even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him. But now, his expression still changed drastically. However, he couldn't be blamed. After all, anyone who saw a long-dead person standing in front of them, alive and well, would be shocked to the extreme. This person dressed like a guard was Yuan Qingji, who was killed by Dongfang Muxue on the peak of Mount Tai. What Dongfang Muxue said last time was true. Song Qingshu originally thought that Dongfang Muxue only said that to dispel Xia Qingqing's desire for revenge, using an illusory possibility to make her search. Who knew that Yuan Qingji would really come back to life? Moreover, from his pace and breathing, Yuan Qingji's martial arts had not weakened at all. Instead, it had improved by a whole level. This must be the effect of the art of origin nirvana that Dongfang Muxue had mentioned. This is going to be troublesome. Song Qingshu smiled bitterly. He clearly remembered how much Xia Qingqing loved Yuan Qingji back then. In order to avenge him, she had thought of all kinds of methods, even sacrificing herself to feed the tiger. If Qingqing knew that Yuan Qingji was still alive, what would she choose? Although his relationship with Xia Qingqing had improved by leaps and bounds in the past 2 years, reaching the stage where their spirit and body were one, Song Qingshu still felt uncertain when he thought about how Xia Qingqing had always been loyal to him. What if she chooses Yuan Qingji? Song Qingshu secretly made up his mind. If he did not secretly kill Yuan Qingji and pretend that he had never come back to life, then Xia Qingqing would not have to be so conflicted. Although Yuan Qingji's martial arts were not what they used to be, Song Qingshu was confident that it would not be difficult to take his life. However, this thought only flashed through Song Qingshu's mind. After all, things were different now. His own pride would not allow him to do such a thing. Let Qingqing choose again. Could it be that I am inferior to a mere Yuan Qingji? Song Qingshu snorted coldly. If she really chooses Yuan Qingji, it will prove that she has never belonged to me. What is there to be sad about? However, thinking of that possibility, he still felt a little sour. He secretly made up his mind that if that happened, he would use force to keep her by his side. Although it was not very kind, at least he would give her the right to know, hey. Song Qingshu suddenly thought of a very important matter. These years, the Golden Snake King's name has been very famous. It is impossible that Yuan Qingji has not heard of him. Why hasn't he appeared? Did he watch me get his wife and foundation? Of course, it would be useless even if Yuan Qingji came back. The current Golden Snake Camp was more than 10 times stronger than the Golden Snake Camp of the past. The entire Golden Snake Camp had been beaten into an iron plate. Now, the people in charge of the various forces under his command were only a small part of the old members of the Golden Snake Camp, who would still recognize him as the former leader. While Song Qingshu was in a daze, the mysterious woman and Yuan Qingji had already turned around and walked out. The man in black was also released and leisurely followed behind them. Hey, who is this woman? How could she take away the suspicious man in black so easily? Seeing the respectful attitude of the officials, Song Qing-shu was even more puzzled. Big brother Yuan? At this moment, Xia Qingqing's trembling voice suddenly rang out. When Yuan Qingji came in, he had walked on the other side. Now that he was going back, he would pass by the room she was in. When she saw Yuan Qingji's appearance, Xia Qingqing couldn't believe it first. When she rubbed her eyes and confirmed that she was not seeing things, she finally couldn't help but call out. Her voice was particularly abrupt in the silent cell. The group of people couldn't help but stop. Yuan Qingji turned around, puzzled. "Miss, are you calling me?" "Miss?" Xia Qingqing was startled. "You don't recognize me?" Yuan Qingji carefully looked her up and down, puzzled. "Are we supposed to know each other?" Xia Qingqing opened her mouth, but couldn't speak for a moment. The joy of their reunion was instantly shrouded in ice. Why did he pretend not to know her? Was it because of the woman beside him? Or was it because he knew about what happened between her and Qing Shu that he didn't want to recognize her? At this time, the woman wrapped in a cloak spoke. "Guanan, we should go." Chapter 1509. The woman's voice was crisp and sweet, but Song Qing Shu had no time to praise her. Instead, he thought to himself, "Guanan? This name sounds so familiar. I seem to have heard it somewhere before." Unfortunately, he couldn't figure it out even after thinking for a long time. Xia Qingqing was also dumbfounded. She muttered the two words Guanan, wondering if she really recognized the wrong person. However, she quickly denied this thought. She was once Yuan Qingji's wife, so how could she recognize the wrong husband? Unfortunately, the other party had no intention of staying. When he heard the woman's words, he nodded and followed her. However, he clearly had some doubts in his heart. When he walked out of the door, he subconsciously looked back and looked at Xia Qingqing. He felt that this woman seemed a little familiar. Song Qingshu secretly frowned and quietly followed her out. He had too many doubts in his heart. Whether it was Yuan Qingji, whether the man in black was Murong Jingwei, or even the identity of the woman in the cloak, he was still a mystery. Does he really not recognize me? Sensing the confusion in his eyes, Xia Qingqing stood there in a daze. Icy Snow, who was at the side, walked up to support her and asked softly, "Is that man Yuan Qingji?" "That's right." Xia Qingqing nodded. "But why doesn't he recognize me? Maybe he has his own difficulties." Even though Icy Snow's first reaction was to think of Song Qingshu, she was kind-hearted. In addition to the fact that she was in the same boat as Xia Qingqing, she didn't say anything else and just comforted her softly. Meanwhile, Song Qingshu followed behind the group of people. When he saw them walking toward the palace, he couldn't help but wonder, who are these people? Did Yuan Qingji really lose his memory, or is he pretending not to know Xia Qingqing? "Can't you just send someone to pick me up? Why did you come personally?" Seeing that they had left the prison, the old man in black reprimanded the woman angrily. "You have a noble identity. How can you step into the prison?" "Huh?" Song Qingshu was even more puzzled. One must know that from the reaction of the people in the prison, this woman clearly had a noble identity. He didn't expect that the old man in black, who was just a prisoner, would dare to reprimand her like that. Could it be that his true identity wasn't from the pugilistic world, but from the imperial court? At first, Song Qingshu was a little puzzled as to why Yilu Qi and the other officials didn't recognize him if he was from the imperial court. Later, he recalled that he had disguised himself and quickly understood. This is no small matter. The Southern Song's diplomatic mission was killed. His Majesty is extremely furious. He even bypassed the Great Secret Service and the Ili Bai Court and ordered all the imperial palaces to deploy troops to investigate this matter. "If I just send someone over, I'm afraid I won't be able to rescue you," the woman explained in a crisp voice. On the surface, the Secret Bureau was an agency of the Liao Kingdom that was in charge of the affairs of the royal family. But in fact, it was a secret spy agency similar to the Imperial City Bureau of the Southern Song Dynasty, the Cleaning House of the Jin Kingdom, and the Flying Guillotine of the Qin Kingdom. The Ili Monastery was similar to the Ministry of Justice of the Han Dynasty. After all, Liao was a country established by the Khitans, so the names of some of its institutions were different from the Han Dynasty. The black-robed old man also understood the stakes. He sighed and said, but in the eyes of others, it's not appropriate. The woman chuckled and said, "Don't worry. With my current status, no one would dare to say anything if I wanted to protect someone. You mustn't lower your guard. I don't know how many people in the palace are waiting for you to make a mistake," the black-robed old man advised with a stern look on his face. "I was too careless this time. Moreover, I was hindered by the Xishao people. That's why I fell into Yellow Cheese trap." In the dark, Song Qingshu's heart moved. Listening to their conversation, this woman was indeed someone from the palace. But was she a palace maid, a princess, or an imperial concubine? After chatting for a while, the two of them suddenly parted ways. The woman and Yuan Qingji walked together in the direction of the palace, while the black-clothed man turned around and left in another direction. There were people patrolling the vicinity of the palace. When they saw someone approaching, a group of soldiers immediately ran over to ask. As a result, the woman raised her hand and revealed something that looked like a gold medal. Then, the soldiers respectfully saluted and let the two of them enter the palace. Song Qingshu took a deep look at their backs, but in the end, he still chased after the black-clothed man. After all, the most important thing in his mind was the whereabouts of Murong Jingwei. As for the mysterious identity of the woman, and even the news about Yuan Qingji, it was far less important. "Your Excellency, who are you? You've been following me for so long. It's time for you to show yourself." The black-clothed old man suddenly stopped and snorted coldly. Song Qingshu walked out of the darkness, but he didn't want to reveal his identity, so he wore a silver mask on his face. The black-clothed old man's expression changed. In fact, he didn't feel anyone's aura at all. It was just that his decades of cultivation had given him a faint impulse. So, he deliberately stopped and shouted. He didn't expect that someone would really come out. "This person's martial arts are so high that I can't feel his aura at all." He clearly saw that the other party was not far in front of him, but the black-clothed old man was shocked to find that there seemed to be no one in that place. Song Qingshu didn't know that the black-clothed old man was tricking him, but even if he knew, it didn't matter. He was already prepared to show himself. "Your Excellency, who are you?" The black-clothed old man's hair stood on end. He was on full alert, defending while preparing to escape. Song Qingshu didn't answer. His figure flashed and directly grabbed at the black-clothed old man's face. As long as he took off the disguise on his face, he would know if he was Murong Jingwei or not. The black-clothed old man only saw a blur in front of him. The other party's hand was already less than 3 inches in front of him. He couldn't help but feel his soul leave his body. But after all, he had decades of pure martial arts. At this critical moment, he hurriedly raised his palms. He didn't hope to repel the other party, but only hoped to move the other party's hand 3 feet away. Then, he would take the opportunity to escape. Song Qingshu casually brushed away the other party's hands. But in his heart, he was shocked. The other party's internal energy seemed to be somewhat familiar. It seemed to be mixed origin chi. The black-clothed old man didn't expect that the attack that he had gathered decades of martial arts would be so easily resolved by the other party. Seeing the other party's hand falling down, he felt despair. Forget it, who knew that the other party's hand didn't penetrate his head. Instead, it only tore off the human skin mask on his face. Noticing that the other party was staring at him in a daze, the black-clothed old man didn't dare to hesitate. He immediately retreated and fled into the darkness. But he didn't feel happy at all. After all, with the martial arts that the other party had displayed, if the other party wanted to chase him, he wouldn't be able to escape. But what made him wild with joy was that the other party actually stood there in a daze. The other party didn't have the slightest intention of chasing him. How could he dare to stay any longer? With a few leaps, he had already disappeared into the night. Song Qingshu didn't chase after the other party because he knew that he wasn't facing Murong Jingwei, but another acquaintance, Jinyang hero Xiaoban. Both parties had crossed paths during the Golden Snake Convention. Xiaoban had also participated in the competition for the Golden Snake King, but they didn't fight against each other. However, because Blood Knife Ancestor had kidnapped Shui Shang, Song Qing-shu had exchanged blows with Xiao Ban on the way to rescue her. Thus, he knew that Xiao Ban had some relations with the Shui family. I'll let you go for Sheng Er's sake. Song Qing-shu muttered to himself, but he was getting more and more curious. Xiao Ban's identity was getting more and more mysterious. Everyone in the Jianghu thought that he was the famous Jinyang hero, but now that he thought about it, his various actions were a little strange. It seemed that he was plotting something big. Forget it. I'll save Icy Snow and Qing first. Song Qing-shu realized that it had been a long time since he came out of the prison. He was worried that something might have happened over there, so he gave up on the idea of investigating further. When he changed back into the jailer's uniform and was about to return to the cell, he was suddenly stopped at the periphery. "Buddy, the prison has been cleared. Let's wait outside." Song Qing-shu slightly furrowed his brows. He thought that since the diplomatic corps of the Shisha country had left and Xiao Ban had been rescued, there were only two women, Icy Snow and Xia Qingqing, except for some prisoners who were already in the prison. He couldn't help but feel a little worried. "Is there any big shot inside?" Song Qing-shu asked in a deep voice. "The son of the Northern Privy Council has come to interrogate the prisoners," the jailer answered casually. But Song Qing-shu's expression changed slightly, because the Northern Privy Council ambassador, Yelu Rinxian, was far away in the northwest, and Yelu Isin was acting as the Northern Privy Council ambassador. Of course, the Northern Privy Council ambassador they were talking about didn't refer to Yelu Rinxian, but the King of Wei. He had seen what kind of person Yelu Sui, Yelu Isin's son, was. Moreover, Yelu Sui was beaten up for trying to flirt with Icy Snow. Even a fool would know that Yelu Sui had come back for revenge. Song Qing-shu couldn't hold back anymore. The jailers were about to turn pale, but their acupoints were quickly sealed. "Beauty, you didn't expect that you still couldn't escape from me in the end, did you?" Yelu Sui was looking at Icy Snow with his head held high. At the same time, he looked at Xia Qingqing greedily. As the Han people say, a misfortune may turn out to be a blessing in disguise. I already have a great beauty, but now I have another charming beauty. TSK, TSK, TSK. God is really kind to me. Xia Qingqing was already in a bad mood. Hearing his words, she got even angrier. But he seemed to know Icy Snow, so she took her hand and asked, "Who is this bastard?" Icy Snow's voice was as cold as ice. "He's just a playboy who flirts with innocent women." Xia Qingqing rolled her eyes and changed her previous anger. She said in a soft and charming voice, "I think this gentleman is extraordinarily handsome. Besides, he can come and go as he pleases. Obviously, he has a high status. I think it'll be easy for him to get us out." When she was roaming in Jianghu, she was a seductress who didn't play by the rules. Now, she could easily get them with some tricks. Icy Snow looked at her strangely. She couldn't figure out why she was acting coquettishly. Could it be that she had given up on herself because of Yuan Qingji? But she was a smart person. She quickly realized that Xia Qingqing probably wanted to trick this playboy into prison and then take the opportunity to escape. "Of course, as long as you obey me, not only will I get you out, but I'll also live a luxurious life from now on." Yelu Sui also patted his chest proudly. Although he was a good-for-nothing, he had a good family background. In order to curry favor with his father, many small families sent beautiful women to throw themselves at him. When he saw Xia Qingqing's appearance, he subconsciously thought of how those beautiful women used to curry favor with him. For a moment, he couldn't help but enjoy it. Chapter 15:10. From Yelu Sui's point of view, the two women had no choice but to hug his thighs in order to get out of prison. He had always loved to do such good deeds. Not only could he save the two beauties, but he could also enjoy their alluring bodies in return. Xia Qingqing pulled Icy Snow's sleeve. "Big sister, young master is actually willing to save us. Why are you still angry over the previous misunderstanding?" Icy Snow couldn't bring herself to feign civility with this person. However, she couldn't disregard Xia Qingqing's face, so she could only reply vaguely. Xia Qingqing also gave Yelu Sui a look. "Young master, my big sister has actually agreed in her heart, but she can't bring herself to do it." After all, you have offended her before. Why don't you persuade her and move her with your sincerity? Okay. Yalu Sui rubbed his hands together. He thought of the two charming beauties throwing themselves at him, especially Icy Snow's cold and arrogant attitude. She even beat him up. But what's the use of having high martial arts? In the end, didn't she still come to his crotch to have fun? When he thought of how the high and mighty Icy Snow was ravaged by him, Yalu Sui felt a surge of heat rising from his lower abdomen. He couldn't wait to open the cell door. "Little lady, I'm coming." Ouch! Unfortunately, before he could finish his sentence, Xia Qingqing punched him in the eye, causing him to fall backward. Xia Qingqing didn't stop at all. She sealed his acupoints and kicked him, a toad lusting after a swan's flesh. "I'll beat you to death." Seeing her beating Yalu Sui up, Icy Snow couldn't help but be dumbfounded. As if she hadn't gotten used to the contrast between before and after, she pulled her back after a long time and said, "Forget it. He will die if you continue beating him." Xia Qingqing clapped her hands. "Big sister, you're so kind. I've killed so many lechers in the past." Although she said so, she didn't continue beating him up. When Song Qingshu arrived, he saw Yalu Sui on the ground, who was beaten up like a panda. He couldn't help but have a strange expression. Although these women are as docile as kittens in my place, they're all formidable tigresses in the martial world. Just now, because Yalu Sui thought that he could use his power to make the two women bow down to him, he purposely dismissed the people in the cell, so when Xia Qingqing beat him up, no one helped her. At that moment, Song Qingshu was wearing a jailer's uniform and had changed his appearance. When Icy Snow and Xia Qingqing saw him, their expressions changed slightly. They knew that if he shouted and alerted the guards outside, they would be in trouble. Without any verbal communication, the two women attacked him from the left and right as if they had planned it beforehand. Song Qingshu was startled, but he quickly realized that they didn't recognize him. When he thought of this, he wasn't in a hurry to acknowledge them. He directly leaned to the side, easily dodging the two women's attacks. Be it Icy Snow or Xia Qingqing, they were extremely surprised. After all, the person opposite them was dressed like a foot soldier and was the kind of cannon fodder that could be easily dispatched. The reason why the two of them teamed up was to prevent him from making any noise and alerting his companions. But who knew that the two of them would misjudge him? This person's martial arts was surprisingly high, and he easily dodged their joint attack. Icy Snow and Xia Qingqing tacitly attacked again. This time, they didn't hold back because they knew that the other party was probably an expert. Unfortunately, as soon as they raised their hands, their bodies suddenly went limp, and they were embraced by the person on both sides. The two women were horrified. They didn't see anything clearly, and yet they were captured by the other party. It was simply unbelievable. Today, there was a fortune teller who said that I'm destined to be in love, and I didn't really believe it. I didn't expect that there would actually be two beautiful ladies throwing themselves into my arms. My luck with women is really not shallow. Song Qingshu said as he kissed the two women's cheeks from both sides. The two women's skin is so tender and smooth. Song Qingshu couldn't stop praising them. Icy Snow was ashamed and indignant. Just as she was about to risk her life, Xia Qingqing laughed and said, "Don't panic, big sister. Apart from Qingshu, who else in this world has such a high level of martial arts and such a bad taste?" Compared to Icy Snow, who had been tracking Murong Jingyue's whereabouts all these years, Xia Qingqing spent more time by Song Qingshu's side, so she naturally knew more about his bad taste and hobbies. Besides, she could feel a very familiar aura when she was hugged by Song Qingshu. Song Qingshu was stunned and couldn't help but smile bitterly. "You can even recognize me?" Upon hearing his real voice, Icy Snow sized him up in disbelief. "Qingshu, is it really you?" Song Qingshu took off the mask on his face and smiled gently. "It's really me." Icy Snow was pleasantly surprised at first, then she blushed. "You're really a bastard." Upon seeing her angry look, Song Qingshu's heart softened. "Icy Snow, it's been hard on you all these years. Was there anything warmer than a lover's comfort in this world?" Icy Snow suddenly felt that all the hardships and fatigue she had been through all these years were swept away. Just as she was about to lie in his arms and rest, she suddenly remembered that there was someone else beside her. Embarrassed, she hurriedly tried to push him away. However, Xia Qingqing seemed to know what she was worried about. She giggled and said, "Big sister, why are you so flustered? There are no outsiders here anyway." Based on Xia Qingqing's character, she wasn't willing to let her man hug her left and right. However, there were two exceptions in this world. One was Agio, who was her rival in love, and the other was Icy Snow, who was in the same boat. Apart from these two, Xia Qingqing wasn't willing to let Song Qingshu hug her left and right like other women. Upon hearing Xia Qingqing's words, Icy Snow's face turned even redder. She thought, "You've just met your husband, and you're suddenly in the mood to make such sarcastic remarks." However, she was considerate and didn't say it out loud. At this moment, Song Qingshu said, "This isn't a place to chat. Let's talk after we get out." The two women nodded secretly and stayed by his side. When the door of the cell was opened, because the acupoints of the guards at the door had just been sealed by Song Qingshu, they easily walked out. Before alerting the surrounding soldiers, Song Qingshu hugged the two women and disappeared into the night sky. Not long after they left, Yelu Sui gradually woke up in the cell. As he crawled up, he cursed, "You two bitches, wait until I catch you and see how I'll press you under my body and humiliate you." Suddenly, he felt the light in front of him dimmed. He raised his head in confusion and found that someone was standing in front of him. Just as he was about to say something, a cold light flashed in front of his eyes. Yelu Sui also looked at the other party with a look of disbelief while holding his neck that was splattering blood. He wanted to say something, but blood kept coming out of his mouth. He couldn't speak at all. In the end, he unwillingly fell to the ground with his eyes wide open. "Boss." Chapter 15:11. When the prison guards finally came in, they found that Yelu Sui was also lying in a pool of blood dead. They couldn't help but be shocked, especially when they thought that he was Wei Wang's only son. Many of them were so scared that their bodies almost melted. However, no one had the ability to hide such a big thing, and no one dared to hide it. Soon, it was reported to the upper echelons, instantly shocking the officialdom of Shangjing City. It was said that even the emperor was furious. Song Qingshu and the others naturally didn't know what happened here. He left with Icy Snow and Xia Qingqing. He originally wanted to go to Zhao Min's place, but after thinking about it, he gave up. When the women met, it would most likely be like Mars colliding with Earth. Even if there was an explosion in the unknown, the turbulent waves in the dark would be unbearable. Song Qingshu shuddered just by imagining a few scenes. It was rare that Xia Qingqing and Icy Snow had a good relationship, so there was no need to add another person to make trouble. Song Qingshu decisively gave up the idea of going to Zhao Min's place, and then brought the two women to another house in the south of the city. The Mongols had a secret stronghold in Shangjing City. So did the Jin Kingdom. This was one of the secret industries of a laundry brothel in Shangjing City. Song Qingshu had the highest authority in the laundry brothel, so he easily took over this house. After settling down, the three of them sat around a table. Xia Qingqing was slightly younger, so she said with some excitement, "Qingshu, why are you here?" "It's a long story. I came here to deal with the Liao Song Alliance and to find the whereabouts of Murong Jingyue," Song Qingshu answered. Hearing his words, the dignified Icy Snow's eyelashes fluttered, and a trace of tenderness appeared in her eyes. "Qingshu, I didn't expect you to help me find Murong Jingyue when you're so busy." Song Qingshu was startled, but he reacted quickly. "How could I forget about this?" Of course, he wouldn't be foolish enough to say that he was looking for Murong Jingyue to cure Zhao Min of the 3-corpse divine pills poison. Moreover, half of it was for Icy Snow's sake. Upon hearing his words, Icy Snow's eyes grew softer and softer, as though tears were about to seep out of her eyes. "Then how did you appear in the prison so coincidentally?" When Xia Qingqing noticed how affectionate the two of them were, she smiled and didn't feel the slightest bit of disgust. Icy Snow must be different from other women. I followed the Shisha people here. Song Qing-shu then described what had happened earlier. I didn't rescue you in the woods. You won't blame me, will you? How could that be? That kind of situation wasn't suitable for saving people, said Icy Snow with a gentle smile. Song Qing-shu lamented. Sister is really considerate. Xia Qingqing, who was at the side, teased, what sister? She's clearly your sister-in-law. She knew the story of how she met Song Qing-shu when she talked to Icy Snow previously. However, as soon as she said that, Icy Snow and Song Qing-shu looked at each other awkwardly. After all, the two of them had already gotten to the point of rolling around in bed. It was strange to hear Icy Snow address her as sister-in-law. Upon seeing their expressions, Xia Qingqing also realized that something was wrong. She quickly changed the topic and said, All right, Brother Song. Since you've already mixed in with the prison guards, why didn't you come out to rescue us after seeing us being molested by that good-for-nothing rich kid? Song Qing-shu smiled bitterly and said, There's no need for me to do anything. Didn't the two of you already beat him half to death? Xia Qingqing stuck out her tongue. Clearly, she felt a little embarrassed when she thought of letting him see her tough side. Actually, the reason why I didn't do anything was because I went after the man in black who was in the same cell as you, Song Qing-shu explained. Xia Qingqing let out an ah, because she suddenly realized that since Song Qing-shu was pretending to be a prison guard, he must have seen how she looked when she called for Yuan Qingji. Would he have any thoughts about this? At the thought of this, she began to worry about her gains and losses. Icy Snow glanced at her and secretly held her hand to comfort her. Is there anything wrong with the identity of that man in black? Is he worthy of your attention? Her question resolved Xia Qingqing's awkwardness to a certain extent, earning her a grateful glance. Song Qing-shu explained, because I suspected that he was Murong Jingwei. This time, it was Icy Snow's turn to exclaim in surprise. However, she soon noticed the meaning behind Song Qing-shu's words and sighed softly. It seems that he isn't. Song Qing-shu nodded. That's right. I went to test him and took off his mask. I found out that he was actually the hero of Jinyang, Xiao Ban. Xiao Ban? Xia Qingqing exclaimed. Xiao Ban had participated in the Golden Snake King's election, so she had a deep impression of him. However, she could not connect the hero of Jinyang with this man in black. That's right. I didn't expect it to be him either. Song Qing-shu smiled bitterly. By the way, Qingqing, did you come from Beijing? Yes. Xia Qingqing knew what he was going to ask. Miss Shui is knowledgeable and decisive. She has already taken control of the 8 Banners aristocrats in Beijing. She's gradually gaining the upper hand in the war against Wu Sangui. I'm afraid she'll be able to get rid of him completely in less than 2 years. By then, she should be able to help you. When Xia Qingqing found out about Dongfang Mushue's true identity, she hated her to death. However, when she found out that Yuan Qingji was still alive, this hatred disappeared and was replaced by deep admiration. After all, as a woman, Dongfang Mushue had accomplished many things that men could not. Still 2 more years. Sensing the pressure from Mongolia, Song Qing-shu increasingly felt that there wasn't enough time. However, he also understood that it was impressive enough for Dongfang Mushue to turn the situation around and pacify Wu Sangui in such a short period of time. One must know that the 3-border rebellion in history lasted for 8 years and almost overthrew the Qing dynasty. If Wu Sangui hadn't died midway due to the passage of time, it would be hard to tell who would be the final victor. Knowing that there were no results in the Qing dynasty for the time being, Song Qing-shu collected his thoughts and turned to ask, Icy Snow, why did that Xiao Ban attack you? Icy Snow was also a loss. I'm not sure either, but it seems like he wants the saber in my hand. Your saber? Song Qing-shu was startled. It should be your big brother, whose cold moon saber. Icy Snow rolled her eyes at him with some hidden bitterness. After all, what happened between them made her feel guilty to her late husband. Back then, after Big Brother who died, this saber was buried with him. Not long ago, when I passed by Cangzhou, I thought that I might be able to find Murong Jingwei to avenge Big Brother, who, so I deliberately took this saber out. Song Qingshu secretly pondered. Wasn't the cold moon saber owned by Nanlan's father? The father and daughter were robbed and killed by a group of mountain bandits. Miao and Feng passed by and saved them, and they got married. Then, Miao and Feng went to Hu Yidao's grave to pay her respects and buried the saber in the grave to honor her good friend. However, this world was very chaotic, so there might be some errors. Song Qingshu didn't dwell on it. What's so special about this cold moon saber? Why does Xiao Ban want it? Moreover, the Xixiao princess heard that you brought a saber with you, so she hurriedly came to capture you. I don't know either. Icy Snow's beautiful eyes widened. Maybe it's because the cold moon saber can cut iron like mud. Although it's not as famous as the dragon saber in the pugilistic world, I think it's not much worse. However, Song Qingshu didn't think so. Although a saber that could cut iron like mud would make people in the pugilistic world fight for it, what kind of divine weapon couldn't a country find? Unless there was a big secret like the dragon saber, why would the country care about it? Where's the saber now? Let me see. Thinking that both Xiao Ban and the Xixiao people came for the cold moon saber, Song Qingshu faintly felt that there might be some secret hidden in it. Unexpectedly, Icy Snow looked worried. The saber was taken away when I was thrown into prison. Oh! Song Qingshu raised his eyebrows and quickly stood up. It's probably still in the evidence room in the prison. Let's go back and look for it. He certainly couldn't let such a crucial saber go missing. Okay. Icy Snow also stood up. This saber was Hu Yidao's relic, and it was related to her son's saber technique in the future. She was more anxious than anyone else. I'll go with you. Xia Qingqing didn't want to stay here alone. When she thought about Yuan Qingji, she felt that only staying by Song Qingshu's side could give her a sense of security. Song Qingshu nodded. Because of what had happened with Yuan Qingji, he was worried about leaving Xia Qingqing here alone. He did not want her to overthink things. As for how to deal with Yuan Qingji's matter, the two of them would discuss it when they were free. Worried that the cold moon saber would be taken away, Song Qingshu brought the two girls along and quickly returned to the prison. However, to their surprise, the 3 floors of the prison were filled with guards. It was obvious that the security was tight. It's probably because we escaped and that foppish young master was beaten up, so this place is under martial law, Icy Snow said softly. She didn't know that Yelu Sui was also dead. This is going to be difficult, Xia Qingqing said with a frown as she looked at the heavily guarded guards not far away. Don't worry, this won't be a problem for your husband. Song Qingshu kissed her on the cheek and laughed. Wait for me here. I'll go in and get the treasured saber and come out. This person is really... Xia Qingqing stood on the spot with a flushed face while holding her cheek. Icy Snow held her hand and said with a smile, Little sister Qing, this proves that Qingshu likes you a lot. Xia Qingqing bit her lip and stomped her feet. Even big sister is teasing me. Icy Snow said softly, I just want to tell you that since you're so happy now, why are you so obsessed with the past? Xia Qingqing knew that Icy Snow was reminding her about Yuan Qingji. She sighed faintly. I've already made up my mind. It's just that Big Brother Yuan used to be me. If Big Brother Hu came back to life, would you still be as carefree as you are now? Icy Snow was taken aback and didn't know how to answer. Yes, if Hu Yidao came back to life, what would she choose? Just as the two girls were feeling lost, a tender shout suddenly sounded in their ears. So you two demonesses are here. Return my brother's life. This book's official account. Monk Lu Ru today, the official account promoted a game. In order to thank the readers for downloading, the monk will organize a red packet activity on the weekend. The total number of downloads will be doubled. For example, if there are 5,000 downloads, I'll give 10,000 yuan. Of course, I'm sure it won't be as many as 5,000 downloads. It'll be difficult to break 1,000. The specific number of red packets and the method of snatching the red packets will be decided by the brothers voting tomorrow. But compared to the sunny red packets, I'm more inclined to have fewer red packets and more money per red packet. That way, it'll be more interesting. In addition, in order to thank the gentleman for downloading, the monk will release more chapters tomorrow. In view of the previous lesson, I won't link it to the number of downloads. I'll directly add 4 chapters. If there's any spare time, I'll add more chapters. If you haven't seen it, welcome to the Monk's official account, Monk Lu. You can download the game in the latest tweet. Of course, you can also see the female characters' pictures in the Monk's official account, as well as some other benefits. Chapter 15:12. A tall woman suddenly rushed out from the shadows, her beautiful face now flashing with hatred. Yalu Nanxian? Xia Qingqing cried out in surprise. Although the two of them didn't know each other, they had met at the Golden Snake gathering before, so they recognized each other. Yalu Nanxian ignored her. The sword in her hand glinted with a cold light, stabbing straight at the two women. It turned out that after receiving news of her brother's death, she came to the prison to investigate. From a description of what happened, she knew that the biggest suspects were Xia Qingqing and Icy Snow, who escaped from the prison. She felt uncomfortable seeing her brother's miserable state, so she came out for a breath of fresh air, but who knew she would run into these two women? Icy Snow's expression changed. She pushed away Xia Qingqing, who was still in a daze. The belt in her sleeve shot out to meet Yalu Nanxian. Yalu Nanxian snorted coldly, changing her swordsmanship, easily parrying the ribbon coming at her, instantly arriving 3 feet in front of Icy Snow. Yalu Nanxian's martial arts was already one of the best among the younger generation, and with this sudden attack, Icy Snow was forced to face the enemy in a hurry, falling into a disadvantageous position in an instant. Fortunately, Xia Qingqing had already reacted. With a wave of her hand, a golden snake all shot towards Yalu Nanxian. Her golden snake sword had also been confiscated in the prison, but there were still a few golden snake alls left on her. Yalu Nanxian's eyes narrowed. In truth, in terms of martial arts, both Icy Snow and Xia Qingqing were on par with her. Facing this golden serpent awl, Yalu Nanxian didn't dare to be careless. She quickly twisted her waist in midair, dodging the golden serpent all's strange attack. Icy Snow took the opportunity to increase the distance between them again, admiring the flexibility of her waist while using the white python whip skill with her ribbon, preventing Yalu Nanxian from getting any closer. At this time, Xia Qingqing spoke. "Miss Nanxian, why did you suddenly attack us? Is there some misunderstanding?" Although the two of them weren't close friends, due to the Golden Snake gathering, they could be considered friends. Xia Qingqing didn't understand why they would attack each other as soon as they met. Yalu Nanxian harumphed coldly. "You know what you've done." Finishing her words, Yalu Nanxian stepped out with a mysterious movement technique, approaching the two women. Noticing the hatred in her eyes, Xia Qingqing's expression changed. She didn't dare to be careless anymore. She quickly picked up the golden snake awl and fired it from time to time to force the other party to retreat. However, she was secretly worried. Her and Icy Snow's weapons had been confiscated previously. Now that they had lost their weapons, Icy Snow could still use the ribbon to replace the silver bell and golden lock to perform the white python whip technique. On the other hand, she couldn't perform most of her martial arts without the golden snake sword. While she was distracted, Yalu Nanxian suddenly took out a crossbow from her waist and shot an arrow at Icy Snow. At the same time, she leaped up and stabbed her sword at Xia Qingqing. Icy Snow's expression changed. She had been focusing all her attention on Yalu Nanxian. So how could she have known that she would suddenly take out a crossbow? It had to be known that crossbows were a powerful weapon used by the government to deal with the people in the world of martial artists. They were fast and powerful, and normal martial artists would not be able to dodge them. In fact, if a 100-man squad fired their crossbows at a close distance, even the 5 ultimate martial artists would die if they were not careful. It was precisely because of the existence of crossbows in armies, as well as some hidden experts worshipped by the government, that the countries in this world had enough deterrence against all kinds of pugilistic world experts. Otherwise, whoever had the highest martial arts would become the emperor. Yalu Nanxian's sudden arrow was 3 times faster than an ordinary crossbow arrow. Not to mention, there was no warning at all. On top of that, the two women were only about 10 feet away from each other. How could Icy Snow dodge it? She could even see the cold glint of the arrowhead. Icy Snow sighed in her heart, Forget it, forget it. I didn't expect to be separated by life and death so soon after I reunited with Qing Shu. Just as Xia Qingqing was about to lose her life, a gust of wind suddenly shot out from the side, forcibly knocking the arrow to the side. Icy Snow had just escaped death. She looked to the side with joy, but before she could rejoice, she saw that Yelu Nanqian's sword had already pierced into Xia Qingqing's chest. Ah! Icy Snow cried out in alarm, but it was too late to save Xia Qingqing. At that moment, a figure suddenly rushed out and grabbed Xia Qingqing. The other hand raised, catching the sword that was inches away from Yelu Nanqian. Yelu Nanqian's lightning-fast sword instantly stopped. Yelu Nanqian was shocked and angry at the same time. In this world, there were only a few people who could catch her sword with 2 fingers. Looking up, it was indeed the person she guessed. Biting her lips, she angrily shouted, "Song, get out of my way!" This person was indeed Song Qing Shu. He had just come out from the prison to find something, but he didn't expect to run into the scene of 3 women fighting. Why are you fighting? He even secretly guessed that it couldn't be because of jealousy, right? But he immediately denied this speculation. After all, the Yelu Nanqian he knew was usually calm and collected, but deep down in her bones, she was incomparably proud. She would never do something like this. Why don't you ask them yourself what they did? Yelu Nanqian looked at the 2 women, her anger still lingering. Song Qing Shu was startled, turning to look at Xia Qingqing. What did you do? Xia Qingqing was not a good-tempered person to begin with. Adding to the fact that she was attacked without rhyme or reason and almost lost her life, she was even angrier. She coldly snorted. We were just having a nice chat here, but the moment she came, she pulled out her sword and attacked us. Who knows what happened? You. Yelu Nanqian's almond-shaped eyes widened, but unfortunately, her sword was caught between Song Qingshu's fingers. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't pull it out. Song Qingshu smiled bitterly. Everyone calm down, speak slowly. I believe there must be some misunderstanding. What kind of misunderstanding could there be? Yelu Nanqian's eyes reddened, tears rolling down her cheeks like pearls from a broken necklace. My older brother went to the prison to interrogate them, but who would have thought that the 2 of them would take the opportunity to kill my older brother and escape from the prison? Not only that, they even beat my older brother to such a miserable state. He must have suffered great torture before he died. Although she didn't like her older brother's bullying and tyrannical ways, they were siblings after all. Ever since they were little, her older brother had always taken good care of her, so their relationship had always been very good. Now that she saw Yelu Sui's tragic death, she was naturally extremely sad and angry. That person is dead? Xia Qingqing was surprised. Although she didn't know Yelu Sui's identity, from his description, she knew he was the same person who had come to the prison and harassed them. You sure know how to act. Yelu Nanqian sneered. Knowing her brother was dead, Xia Qingqing didn't want to argue with her anymore. She softened her tone. That man came to the prison and tried to take advantage of me and Sister Bing Shuer. I did teach him a good lesson, but he left after beating him up. Could it be that he suffered internal injuries? That shouldn't be the case. I know how much strength I used. It's just some superficial wounds. Yelu Nanqian trembled. What internal injuries? My brother died because someone slit his throat. Thinking of her brother's tragic state, she felt a chill run down her spine. That's impossible. It wasn't us. Xia Qingqing hurriedly said. The prison was heavily guarded. Only the 2 of you escaped. If it wasn't you, who else could it be? Yelu Nanqian angrily retorted. Song Qingshu finally understood the whole story. He didn't expect Yelu Sui to also die. No wonder the prison was so heavily guarded. It was only because of the prison break. Nanqian, they aren't lying. Yelu Nanqian didn't believe him. Humph, they're your women. Of course you'll speak up for them. Although she wasn't sure, she noticed the way the 2 women looked at Song Qingshu as a woman herself. How could she not see the relationship between them? Thinking of this, she felt even more annoyed. Hearing this, Xia Qingqing and Bing Shuer's faces turned red. After all, they were widows living alone. They had husbands in name. Now that an outsider had exposed their relationship, it was no wonder they felt awkward. I'm not speaking up for them. I was there too. Song Qing-shu said in a low voice. You were there too? Yalu Nanxian was surprised. That's right, Song Qing-shu nodded. I was the one who rescued them from the prison. Yalu Nanxian's face suddenly paled. So you were the one who slashed them. In that instant, all her hopes turned to dust. Song Qing-shu knew at a glance that she was thinking the wrong thing. He snapped, What nonsense are you thinking? Your brother wasn't killed by them. Nor was I the one who killed him. Yalu Nanxian bit her lip. I know my brother's character. He must have been tempted to bully your two lovers. And you saw him. How could the world-renowned Golden Snake King tolerate another man offending his forbidden woman? So he killed him. In any case, he's just a hedonistic son of a rich family. Why would he care about you? She knew her brother's daily habits and could more or less guess what he was doing in prison. Although it was shameful, it wasn't a crime worthy of death. Hearing her call him lover and forbidden woman, both Xia Qingqing and Bing Shui felt extremely embarrassed, but there was a strange feeling in their hearts. They could indeed be considered Song Qingshu's lover. Your imagination is quite strong. Song Qingshu smiled bitterly. I know Yalu Sui. How could I kill him? Although my brother is the son of Wei Wang, you don't have to care about him, do you? Yalu Nanxian still didn't believe it. Song Qingshu looked at the sparkling tears on her face and said softly, I don't really care about the son of Wei Wang, but he's your brother. Why would I kill my brother-in-law? As soon as he said this, Xia Qingqing and Bing Shui's expressions instantly became extremely strange. Bing Shui had a faint smile on her face, while Xia Qingqing secretly spat. I knew it. None of the beautiful women around this bastard can escape from his palm. Last time, I already felt that they were flirting with each other. Next time when I return to Shandong, I'll have to remind Ajiu to control her husband, so that he doesn't fool around all day. Because of her identity, it was not convenient for Xia Qingqing to say anything about Song Qingshu, but the jealousy gene in her bones inevitably flared up, so she subconsciously thought of finding Ajiu. At this time, Yalu Nanxian's originally pale cheeks instantly turned red. She was ashamed and angry. What brother-in-law? Unexpectedly, crossbows were not only weapons of mass destruction in ancient times, but also prohibited in modern times. Chapter 15:13. With our relationship, how could I kill your brother? Song Qingshu reached out to wipe the tears off her face and said pitifully, My condolences, I will help you find the murderer. Noticing the two women's strange gazes, Yalu Nanxian couldn't stand it anymore. She stomped her feet, turned around, and ran away. Before she disappeared, she said, Who needs your help? I will check again to see if what you said is true or not. Although she said that, she actually believed it in her heart. Seeing Yalu Nanxian almost running away, Xia Qingqing walked over and said with a faint smile, Prince Song really has a lot of female friends in the world. Icy Snow also frowned slightly. It was obvious that she was having a headache about this fickle man. Faintly sensing the murderous intent in the air, Song Qingshu hurriedly changed the topic. Ahem, I just checked inside and only found Qingqing's golden snake sword and Icy Snow's silver bell golden lock. As for the coal moon saber, it's gone missing. As he said that, he handed the stolen golden snake sword and soft rope to the two women. Gone missing? Icy Snow's beautiful face turned pale when she heard that the cold moon saber was missing. I was confused before, but now it seems that the person who took the cold moon saber is most likely the mysterious person who killed Yalu Sui. Song Qingshu analyzed. Could it be the Xiao Ban you mentioned before? Icy Snow asked hurriedly. After all, Xiao Ban also came for the cold moon saber. No, Song Qingshu shook his head. I have been following Xiao Ban, so he didn't have the chance to come back to kill and take the saber. Then could it be the people from Western Xia? Xia Qingqing also analyzed. That's possible. Song Qingshu thought for a while and said with uncertainty, but they just need to take the saber. There's no need to kill Yalu Sui. After all, Yalu Sui is Yalu Isen's only son and Yalu Nanxian's brother. The Western Xia Crown Prince is about to marry Yalu Nanxian. Why would he kill Yalu Sui? As he was analyzing, he suddenly saw the two women's strange gazes. He heard Xia Qingqing mumble in a low voice, Why do you always like to find other people's wives? Song Qing-shu almost spat out a mouthful of blood. She and I have been together for a long time. It's just that she interfered in our marriage. Even though he explained, the two women still looked as if they knew what his hobby was. Song Qing-shu was also very helpless, so he simply did not explain. Could it be that someone in the Western Xia doesn't want to see this marriage succeed? Xia Qingqing raised another conjecture. She had followed Ajiu and Dongfang Muxue for the past few years, so her vision was no longer comparable to that of the pugilistic world woman of the past. That's not impossible. We need to investigate further, Song Qing-shu said in a low voice. However, the clamor of soldiers soon came from not far away. It turned out that the battle here had alerted the guards over there. Let's go back first and think about it at length. Song Qing-shu hugged the two women with each hand and left before the soldiers arrived. After returning to the secret hideout of the laundry yard, Song Qing-shu said to the two women, "It's getting late. You two must be tired after being tossed around for the whole day. Take a rest first, and we'll go and find out more information tomorrow morning." Icy Snow and Xia Qingqing nodded. They had fought several battles today, and they were also captured and imprisoned. They were indeed exhausted. Fortunately, Song Qing-shu had already thoughtfully instructed the servants to prepare hot water in advance. The two women then found their clothes and went to take a bath. On the other hand, Song Qing-shu began to organize his next thoughts. Apart from looking for Murong Jingwei, he now had to find the murderer and the cold moon saber. However, these two tasks could probably be combined into one. After finding the saber, he would most likely find the murderer. According to various information, this cold moon saber was most likely related to the Mandarin duck saber, and he could start from this aspect. Tomorrow, he would go to the Western Xia Diplomatic Corps to check if they were the ones who did it. In addition, he could ask Xiao Ban to see if he knew any secrets about the Mandarin duck saber. There was also Yuan Chengji's matter. After thinking for a while, he felt dizzy. Song Qing-shu simply stopped thinking and decided to peep first. Apu, how could a scholar's matter be called peeping? He would think about it after seeing the two women bathing. Unfortunately, things didn't go according to his wishes. The two women each had their own worries and obviously didn't have the mood to take a leisurely bath today. Soon they finished bathing. When Song Qing-shu was about to sneak in, the door was already open from the inside. "What are you trying to do?" Icy Snow asked in puzzlement when she saw his sneaky behavior. Song Qing-shu looked embarrassed. He lifted his hand that was about to open the door and touched the back of his head. That's nothing. I'm just here to see if you have enough hot water." Huh? Icy Snow had a strange expression on her face. She faintly felt that he was up to no good. Xia Qingqing, who was at the side, laughed and said, "Sister Icy, don't believe his nonsense. He just wants to come in and steal." Icy Snow's expression became even more strange. After all, when she knew Song Qing-shu, he was still an upright and aloof person, although he was also a little lecherous. Song Qing-shu also felt a little embarrassed. Icy Snow was different from other women. She had accompanied him during his darkest times. Therefore, he always wanted to leave a perfect impression on her. It's getting late. You should rest early. I'll be going back to my room first." Xia Qingqing pushed him to Icy Snow and said with a smile, "You haven't seen each other for so long. You must have a lot to talk about. Spend some time with Sister Icy." As she spoke, she winked at Song Qing-shu. Her eyes were exceptionally bright and charming. Then, she ran back to her room with a grin. Song Qing-shu was so angry that he wanted to smack her, but he didn't expect her to send him such an assist. His previous gloominess was instantly swept away. He indeed had a lot of things to talk about with Icy Snow. Of course, he wanted to sleep with her more. However, he only dared to think about it. He loved and respected Icy Snow and was afraid of offending her. Besides, Xia Qingqing had solemnly said that she was only willing to accompany him with Ajiu. He couldn't even think about other women, so he could only give up on this idea. This Qingqing, Icy Snow stomped her feet. A layer of redness appeared on her snow-like skin. Although she was close to Song Qing-shu, they were far from being an old married couple. In addition, they had been separated for many days, so the shyness in her heart grew stronger. Have you been well these days, sister? Song Qing-shu held Icy Snow's hand and asked affectionately. Icy Snow smiled sweetly. Of course I've been well. Song Qing-shu sighed. When I met you this time, I realized that you've lost weight. I think you must have suffered a lot of hardships in the past 2 years. Hearing his gentle voice, Icy Snow felt that the hardships she encountered over the years were nothing. When I saw you, all the hardships in the past disappeared without a trace. Song Qing-shu didn't expect Icy Snow, who had always been arrogant, to say such touching words of love. For a moment, he couldn't help but be overjoyed and hugged her in his arms. Just like that, the two hugged each other without the slightest desire, only the closeness of two souls in the mortal world. After a long time, Icy Snow pushed him away and said softly, Qing-shu, go and see Qing-qing. After seeing her today, her emotions are a little unstable. Seeing that she wanted to say something but hesitated, Song Qing-shu knew that it wasn't convenient for her to talk about Yuan Qingji behind Xia Qingqing's back, so she could only remind him like this. Okay. Song Qing-shu didn't refuse. He was really afraid that Xia Qingqing would be stubborn again. Back then, he was tormented by her decisions in the Qing kingdom. Just now, Xia Qingqing pushed Song Qing-shu into Icy Snow's arms and returned to her room with a smile. After closing the door, her smile disappeared and was replaced with a face full of sorrow. Lying on the bed, she thought about Song Qing-shu for a while and Yuan Qingji for a while. All kinds of pressure from secular ethics overwhelmed her, making it hard for her to breathe. Tears flowed down unknowingly. Young lady, why are you crying? At this moment, a teasing voice suddenly rang in her ears. Xia Qingqing turned around in surprise and was already sitting on the edge of the bed. Why are you? I'm here to accompany you. Song Qing-shu smiled and scratched her nose, saying with some pity. Xia Qingqing's expression was a little strange. Why are you done so quickly this time? Don't tell me someone is impersonating you. As she spoke, she pulled his face to see if there was a face-changing mask or something. Song Qing-shu was speechless. You've really learned bad things after being with me for a long time. Your thoughts are getting dirtier. Aya, Xia Qingqing exclaimed. Only then did she realize that she was thinking in the wrong direction. Song Qing-shu laughed. In that case, I'll let you personally see if I'm impersonating you. As he spoke, he turned to her bed. Feeling his claws of Lushan, Xia Qingqing blushed. While dodging, she said, wait a moment. I have something to tell you. Go ahead. I'm listening. Song Qing-shu didn't intend to stop at all. Hey you, I really have something serious to tell you. Xia Qingqing said somewhat bitterly. Seeing that he still had no intention of stopping, she could only say, I met Big Brother Yuan today. She thought to herself, you should stop and listen to me. Unexpectedly, Song Qing-shu seemed to be indifferent. So what? I'm talking about Yuan Qingji. My husband, he's not dead. Xia Qingqing was worried that he didn't understand, so she explained with a trembling voice. As expected, Song Qing-shu stopped and put his hands on the bed. I know. I've been waiting for you to tell me. You know, this time, it was Xia Qingqing's turn to be stunned. Yeah, I was disguised as a prison guard. I saw him, Song Qing-shu answered. Xia Qingqing bit her lip. Qing-shu, what do you think I should do? That's easy. Song Qing-shu patted her leg. Open up. Xia Qingqing was a little dazed, but she instinctively did as he said. Song Qing-shu lowered his waist. Let's do that. Second update. Thank you, gentlemen, for downloading the game on the official account. Official account. Monk Lu Ru. Chapter 15-14. Ah! Xia Qingqing finally reacted and exclaimed. She looked at him shyly and angrily. You! Song Qing-shu smiled. What's wrong? Feeling the pressure from him, Xia Qingqing blushed and turned her head away. You know, Song Qing-shu chuckled. I'm just helping you make a choice. Xia Qingqing's eyes were misty, and her face became even redder. She bit her lip. You call this helping me make a choice? Of course. Song Qing-shu raised his head proudly. Xia Qingqing clenched her fist. I'm really conflicted. What's there to be conflicted about? Of course you're going to choose me, Song Qingshu said rudely. Xia Qingqing was both angry and amused. Are you that confident that I'll choose you? Of course. Song Qingshu changed the topic. Even if you don't choose me, I'll just run to Yuan Qingji and tell him all the positions I've unlocked on you. You two won't be able to be together then. Xia Qingqing said angrily. How can you be so despicable and shameless? So what if I am? Song Qingshu said as he moved. In the face of love, what's the big deal about being despicable and shameless? Xia Qingqing's soul almost came out of her body. She looked at him with her watery eyes and finally sighed. I know you're saying this on purpose. You're putting all the blame on yourself to reduce my guilt. Thank you, Brother Song. Song Qingshu was stunned. The domineering expression on his face changed to a gentle smile. Our Qingqing is becoming more and more understanding. Xia Qingqing looked at the man on top of her and smiled bitterly. I don't know what's wrong with me. I didn't want to be someone else's wife. Instead, I wanted to be your secret lover. Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat. He whispered in her ear, not only are you becoming more and more understanding, but your words of love are also becoming more and more touching. Xia Qingqing laughed and scolded him. She patted his chest. I'm talking to you seriously, but you're making fun of me. Song Qingshu chuckled. Since you've made up your mind, you should be obedient. Be good and turn around. Xia Qingqing rolled her eyes at him, hesitated for a moment, and finally leaned over. Early the next morning, Xia Qingqing crawled out of bed because she remembered that icy snow was next door. She was too embarrassed to sleep for too long. Looking at Song Qingshu, who was still snoring away, Xia Qingqing rubbed her burning cheeks. She was really going to die. Yesterday, she had actually discussed Big Brother Yuan with him in that kind of situation. However, she had to admit that the other party's domineering way of doing things was decisive, resolving the conflict in her heart. She had already realized that she couldn't go back to the past with Yuan Qingji. After all, she couldn't easily open her legs to another man and return to being Mrs. Yuan. That's good too. Xia Qingqing sighed and suddenly realized that her whole body was relaxed. When she went out, she happened to bump into Icy Snow. Icy Snow was practicing martial arts in the courtyard. Looking at the graceful figure among the flowers and her soft and graceful figure, Xia Qingqing, who was also a woman, was stunned. Icy Snow was extremely beautiful to begin with. In addition to the graceful martial arts of the ancient tomb sect, they complemented each other and made her look like a fairy dancing among the flowers. That bastard really has a lot of luck with women. After Xia Qingqing made up her mind to be Song Qingshu's woman, her jealousy began to surface again. However, when she recalled that Xia Qingqing was Icy Snow, she didn't feel anything. At this moment, Icy Snow also noticed her. After stopping her practice, she walked over with a smile. Younger sister, you look rosy and radiant. You must have gotten rid of the knot in your heart. Ah, yes. Xia Qingqing stammered with a red face. At the same time, she secretly cursed Song Qingshu. She thought to herself that everyone knew what had happened last night, and it was really embarrassing. When Icy Snow saw her hesitant and blushing face, she couldn't help but be taken aback. Why was she so nervous? However, Icy Snow was an experienced person, after all. She suddenly understood something. When she mentioned the rosy and radiant face, she must have misunderstood something. This time, Icy Snow also blushed. She was just saying it naturally and didn't refer to what happened between them last night. Looking at Xia Qingqing's blushing cheeks and sparkling eyes, Icy Snow couldn't help but feel that her little uncle was really lucky. She and Song Qingshu got to know each other through hardships. During that period of time, they depended on each other. Now that he was successful and surrounded by beauties, not only did she not feel jealous, but she also felt happy for him. What are you two talking about? Song Qingshu's voice came from not far away. It turned out that he had also woken up. We're talking about you. Icy Snow smiled tenderly. Her graceful bearing made Xia Qingqing fall in love with her. Let's go to the street and have breakfast. Then we can pay a visit to the diplomatic corps of the Western Xia country. Let's find out whether they are the ones behind this. Song Qing-shu jumped in between the two women. Then, he held their hands and walked outside. The two women blushed at once. Although they could do whatever they wanted with Song Qing-shu in private, they still felt a little embarrassed to be hugged by him in broad daylight. The two women stole a glance at each other and found that the other party was also looking at them. Their faces became redder and redder, and they tried to pull their hands back like frightened rabbits. Song Qing-shu didn't allow them to say anything. He firmly grabbed their hands and walked out. Seeing that they couldn't get rid of him, the two women sighed inwardly and finally let him be. In a restaurant, a group of diners was eating breakfast. From time to time, their eyes would sneak a glance at the man sitting at the table by the window. All of them revealed looks of envy. Of course, it wasn't because of his dignified appearance, but because the two female companions on his left and right were too beautiful. They watched as the man intimately fed a pastry to the mouth of the woman dressed in black on the left. The woman's red lips parted slightly, and not only did she put the pastry in her mouth, but she also seemed to lick the man's fingers intentionally or unintentionally. The group of men at the side stared blankly and wailed in their hearts, "This is really immoral, immoral." However, when a man took out a piece of pastry and handed it to the woman in white on the right, the group of people were all stunned. Isn't this guy too daring? He's actually seducing another woman in front of his female companion. Because the two women were both heavenly beauties, both of them looked like they had walked out of a painting. Their temperaments were also worlds apart from those maidservants of noble families. No one thought that either of them was willing to be a concubine. They only thought that a man had brought his female companion and her close friend out. As expected, the woman dressed in white looked at the pastry in front of her with a troubled expression. The group of onlookers laughed in their hearts. This man's methods are too clumsy. If he came out with the woman dressed in white in private, he might really be able to hook up with her. However, in front of her female companion, even if the woman dressed in white was willing, she wouldn't dare to say it. However, what made the group of men's eyes pop out was that although the woman dressed in white's face was red, after hesitating for a while, she finally opened her mouth and bit the pastry. Seeing the man put his finger into her mouth, the surrounding group of diners couldn't help but swallow their saliva. Then, they immediately looked at the woman dressed in green, thinking that she might fall out on the spot. However, what made the group of diners want to vomit blood was that not only was the woman dressed in green not angry at all, but she was also watching all of this with a smile on her face. Are my eyes playing tricks on me, or are they crazy? How can there be such a magnanimous woman in this world? I don't know what kind of dog-asterisk luck this man has to have two fairy-like women at the same time. And he even has two fairy-like women on his left and right. The three people at the table by the window were, of course, Song Qing-shu and the others. Sensing their murderous gazes, Song Qing-shu was secretly pleased. No wonder the male protagonist in the online novels in my previous life often brought a few stunning female companions to show off their love. This kind of envious, jealous, and hateful gazes is really intoxicating. Don't be like this. They're watching. Icy Snow was a little shy, so she sat there with a red face and felt uneasy. Just let them watch. Song Qing-shu smiled and continued to pick up a pastry and stuffed it into her mouth. Eat more. You become thinner. Icy Snow was helpless. She could only lower her head and eat, not daring to look at the gazes of the people around her. Ahem. Do you guys know how many major events happened last night? There was never a lack of people who talked loudly in the inn. Moreover, there were many people in the inn and they were well informed. Most of the time, some rumors in the streets were not far from the truth. What major events? The group of people was instantly attracted. No matter how beautiful a woman was, she was still someone else's. It was more interesting to listen to gossip. The current king of Wei, the legitimate son of Yelu Isin, the privy secretary of the northern courtyard, Yelu Sui, was also killed. What? The group of people exclaimed. Who is so bold to kill King Wei's only son? Yelu Sui was also a well-known figure in Shangjing City. Everyone knew that he was Yelu Isin's only son. Even Xia Qingqing and Icy Snow pricked up their ears. After all, Judging from last night's situation, the two of them were the most suspicious ones. Seeing that the two fairies' attention was attracted, the person showed off even more and said, after the news spread, His Majesty was extremely furious. He sent Ely by courtyard to investigate this matter thoroughly. After a night of interrogation, there's a preliminary result now. What's the result? The surrounding people were very cooperative. The person glanced at the window, seeing that Xia, Qingqing, and Icy Snow were also listening attentively. He then continued proudly, I heard that Yelu Sui was also killed because he accidentally heard that Yelu Qi and Xiao Ban were plotting a rebellion. What? How is that possible? The group of people instantly burst into an uproar. Even Song Qing-shu and the others looked at each other. How did this involve Yelu Qi? Speaking of which, how did Xiao Ban become the emperor's father-in-law? Someone asked the same question. All the imperial palaces are in charge of His Majesty's personal army. He is His Majesty's most trusted confidant. Yelu Qi is a well-known, upright gentleman. Why would he rebel? When the Duke of Zhou is afraid of rumors, when Wang Mang is courteous and modest, who can say for sure whether he is a gentleman or a villain? The person spoke frankly with assurance. Moreover, think about it. Yelu Sui also died in the imperial palace's prison. How could Yelu Qi, the chief official, escape responsibility? Third update. After listening to the suggestions left by many readers, I will set up a QQ group and only allow friends who help download and register to join. When the time comes, red packets will be snatched in there. This will be fair to those who actually downloaded and registered the game. Previously, I was worried that there would be too many people and that the QQ group's limit wouldn't be enough. Currently, 258 people have downloaded. I believe that 500 people should be more than enough. I will announce the group number later. When the time comes, you can bring a screenshot of your game character to the group to verify it. Then, you can send red packets in the group on the weekend. When the time comes, the number of red packets will be as small as possible. This way, the money in each red packet will be more meaningful. For example, 1,000 yuan into 20 red packets or 10 red packets. Everyone will compete on their luck. Chapter 15:15. That's right. The murder happened in the territory of all the palaces. Who would believe that Yelu Qi didn't know about it? A group of people echoed. Icy Snow couldn't help but ask in a low voice, Is it really Yelu Qi who did it? I don't think so, Xia Qingqing said with a frown. She knew Yelu Qi and knew that he was a modest gentleman. She couldn't believe that he was an ambitious and unscrupulous person. Song Qing-shu also nodded. It shouldn't be him. He recalled the conversation he overheard between Yelu Yisin and Xiao Xiama. It seemed that Yelu Yisin had planned to use Xiao Xiama to ruin Yelu Qi's reputation. He didn't expect Yelu Qi to take advantage of the news of his son's death so quickly. He was really ruthless. No wonder he was a traitor of the Liao kingdom. By the way, who is that Xiao Ban? Someone asked curiously. You don't even know him? Xiao Ban used to be a famous swordsman of Jinyang in Jianghu. But later it was said that he was from a Xiao family of the 5th branch of the emperor. His daughter, who was as beautiful as a flower, also entered the palace to participate in the election. Although she wasn't chosen as the empress in the end, she was given the title of concubine when she was favored and trusted by the emperor. His father was also given the title of the emperor's father-in-law. The 5th branch of the emperor's father-in-law. Song Qing-shu was secretly shocked. The power of Liao was jointly controlled by the royal Yelu family and the Xiao family, and all the concubines were from the 5th branch of the emperor's father-in-law. I didn't expect that Xiao Ban would become the father-in-law of Liao. Xia Qingqing was secretly shocked. The last time she saw him, he was still a man in Jianghu. She didn't expect that he would become the emperor's father-in-law in such a short time. Yelu Qi and Xiao Ban are the emperor's henchmen and the emperor's father-in-law. Would the emperor believe that they are plotting a rebellion? Someone asked. The person who had disclosed the news before replied, His Majesty is wise and powerful. Of course, he won't believe it so easily. He has sent people from the Ely by courtyard to investigate this case. I heard that the people from the Secret Service of the Great Intelligence are also involved in this case. He has even summoned people from the Western Xia country's diplomatic corps to inquire about this case. Now, it all depends on the final outcome of the trial. Upon hearing this, Song Qing-shu spread out his hands and said, "Well, it seems that we don't need to go to the diplomatic mission of the Western Xia country this time. Neither do we need to look for Xiaoban." Icy Snow knitted her brows. Although she really wanted to retrieve the cold moon saber, a few key figures were currently being investigated and they couldn't come into contact with them. Noticing that some of the diners would glance at her from time to time, Icy Snow lowered her voice and said, "Let's go. I don't like this place." "All right, let's go." Song Qing-shu thought that the descendants of the ancient tomb sect all liked to be quiet. He wasn't sure if it was a coincidence or not. Maybe they had noticed this when they were choosing their descendants. Seeing that the two beauties had left, the person who had been chatting with confidence and composure lost most of his interest in an instant. Faced with the questions of the people around him, he only replied half-heartedly, "Qing-shu, I want to—" After returning to their residence, Xia Qingqing wanted to say something, but stopped on second thought. Song Qing-shu smiled and said, "Do you want to see Yuan Qingji again?" "You? How did you know?" Xia Qingqing's face turned pale. She hurriedly explained, "I don't mean anything else. I just want to figure out what's going on with him and put an end to it completely. Otherwise, I'll always be thinking about this matter in the future, and it won't be fair to you." Song Qing-shu reached out and held her shoulder. He quietly looked in her eyes and said, "You don't have to explain so quickly. I understand what you mean. I also saw his appearance yesterday. He probably didn't deliberately refuse to acknowledge you. He most likely lost his memory." "Lost his memory?" Xia Qingqing blinked. "That's right." Song Qing-shu had heard Dongfang Mushua mention the possibility of Yuan Qingji's survival before. Since he's still alive, it proves that the 9 transformation primeval chaos art that Dongfang Mushua speculated about really exists. However, no matter how powerful this divine art is, he was still struck in the head by a fatal blow. It's already very fortunate that he could come back from the dead. It's reasonable that his memory was damaged and has disappeared. "Is that so?" Xia Qingqing muttered to herself. However, she also felt that this speculation was reasonable. "But I still want to see him and clarify things with him face to face." Xia Qingqing raised her head and looked at him with a pleading expression. Song Qing-shu frowned. However, when he thought about it again, he remembered that when he first met Xia Qingqing, she was a loyal and unyielding woman. He admired her persistence very much. Now that she was so benevolent to Yuan Qingji, it further proved that if anything happened to him in the future, she would do the same to him. Tui tui. How could he think of such inauspicious words? "Qing-shu, forget it. I don't want to see him anymore." Seeing that he was silent for a long time, Xia Qingqing was suddenly shocked. Since she had already chosen him, she was still thinking about Big Brother Yuan. This should be a taboo for men. Song Qing-shu laughed. "Silly girl, I'm not such a petty person. How about this? I'll bring you to the palace to find him. However, we have to wait until nightfall. It'll be safer that way." "Thank you, Big Brother Song." Xia Qingqing's heart warmed when she felt his pampering. She excitedly threw herself into his arms and kissed his cheek. However, she immediately remembered that Icy Snow was still at the side. She quickly pushed him away. Her blushing face looked extremely cute. "You two sisters should rest here first. I'll go out and investigate the relevant information. I'll bring you to the palace at night," Song Qing-shu said softly. "Okay." Xia Qingqing was still immersed in extreme happiness. She would listen to whatever Song Qing-shu said. It's a special time in Shanjing City now. "Be careful on the way," Icy Snow said. Song Qing-shu laughed. "Don't worry. With my martial arts, no one in the world can keep me here. On the contrary, you two should not go out for the time being. Otherwise, you'll be recognized." "We got it." After coming out of the mansion, Song Qing-shu hurried in the direction of Zhao Min's house. After all, there was no news from him after he left yesterday. She must be waiting anxiously. Along the way, he secretly sighed. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that he couldn't split himself. Wouldn't it be wonderful if he could split himself and leave one with each of his confidants? Wait, does this count as cuckolding myself? Song Qing-shu suddenly had an extremely strange expression. Time passed by while his imagination ran wild. Soon, he arrived at Zhao Min's house. Originally, he was worried that she had gone out. However, when he entered the courtyard, he found that she was burning incense and playing the guqin in the pavilion. Song Qing-shu clapped his hands and praised, "Your Highness, you're really amazing. It's like an immortal's music that lingers in the air for 3 months." Zhao Min ignored him and continued to play the guqin. Song Qing-shu smiled bitterly. He knew that she was angry, so he didn't dare to disturb her. He just listened quietly at the side. The distant sound of the guqin gradually calmed his anxious heart. In addition, he could also appreciate her white and slender hands. It wasn't a difficult thing to bear. After the song ended, Zhao Min put away the guqin and stood up. She rolled her eyes at him. "You're using some nonsense idioms. Do you know anything about music?" Song Qing-shu smiled awkwardly. "I don't know." He was really a layman in this aspect. "Why? You're willing to come back from the land of tenderness?" Zhao Min's next words made him anxious again. Song Qing-shu was shocked. He hurriedly sniffed his clothes. Was it because he didn't change his clothes and she smelled the fragrance of xia, qingqing, and icy snow? But she could smell them from so far away. Was she born in the year of the dog? "I don't need to smell to know." Zhao Min seemed to have guessed his thoughts. She snorted. "Yesterday, the imperial palace deployed to capture 2 beautiful women. From the strange weapon of one of them, it's easy to determine that she's Xia Qingqing of the Golden Snake Camp. I don't know who the other woman is, but she's most likely your confidant." Song Qing-shu smiled awkwardly and didn't know how to respond. Zhao Min walked past him and continued. "When our eldest young Master Song learned that his little lover was in trouble, he naturally rushed over to save them. Coincidentally, he ran into Yilu Sui in the cell, who had lustful thoughts towards your 2 little lovers. In a rage, you killed him with a knife and then ran away with your 2 little lovers. It's just that poor Yilu Qi and Xiao Ban, he became your scapegoats. Although Xia Qingqing was foreign yuan in name, how could her relationship with Song Qing-shu be hidden from Zhao Min's penetrating eyes? As for Yilu Sui's character, there was no one in Shangjing who didn't know about it. He appeared in a cell with 2 stunning beauties in the middle of the night. Even if one used their toes to think, they would know what he wanted to do. The inference that followed was logical. A trace of astonishment flashed across Song Qing-shu's face. Then he smiled and said, "Princess is really a female Zhuge Liang. With just a little bit of information, you were able to restore the whole thing so accurately. Unfortunately, you guessed the most important point wrong." "Oh." A strange expression appeared on Zhao Min's face. Clearly, she was also very curious about where she had gone wrong. Song Qing-shu said, "I didn't kill Yilu Sui. Although I did have the intention to kill him, his identity is a bit special. In addition, he had already been beaten up, so I let him go. I didn't think that he would still be unable to escape death in the end." "Special identity? A Liao Wei Wang shouldn't be able to scare our eldest young Master Song, right?" Zhao Min was puzzled, but she reacted quickly. "Oh, so it's because he is Yilu Nanqian's brother. Eldest young Master Song really is merciful." Hearing her keep calling him eldest young Master Song, it was clear that she was extremely angry. Song Qing-shu broke out in a cold sweat and hurriedly explained, "Actually, the reason why I came back so late last night was because I found someone suspected to be Murong Jingwei." Oh, hearing the news about Murong Jingwei, Zhao Min's attention was indeed attracted. Only then did Song Qing-shu tell her about his pursuit of Xiao Ban. Of course, he tried his best to minimize the presence of Xia, Qingqing, and icy snow. "Xiao Ban?" Zhao Min was silent. "I guess he is most likely after the secret of the Mandarin duck saber. But now that he and Yilu Qi are involved in the rebellion, I'm afraid he can't even protect himself. Unfortunately, we still haven't found Murong Jingyue's whereabouts." Song Qing-shu said apologetically. Seeing that he was still concerned about her, Zhao Min's expression softened a little. "Don't worry, the more he hides, the more his foxtail will be exposed. The promised 4 chapters have been completed. Thank you for your continued support. Chapter 15-16. What do you mean? Song Qing-shu asked in confusion. Zhao Min stood with her hands behind her back and looked at the vague outline of the palace in the distance. If he had disguised himself as a normal court official, we would have found him long ago. Now that we have investigated a few more suspicious people, we still can't find him. There are 2 possibilities. Either he is not in Shangjing at all, or his status is higher than the people we found before. Only then would he have enough resources and ability to hide his tracks. Song Qing-shu's eyes lit up. He couldn't help but think of the detective dramas in his previous life. Ordinary people would leave behind a lot of clues and traces when they committed crimes, but some experts would not leave any traces or clues for the police. But this would expose their identities to a certain extent. Such a brilliant anti-investigation awareness was most likely someone from within the legal system. Now that he thought about it, Murong Jingyue's matter was similar. The more perfect the concealment, the more a fox's tail would be exposed. Who do you think killed Yelu Yisin's son? Song Qing-shu suddenly thought of this matter. He wanted to see if he could get any information from Zhao Min that he didn't know. Zhao Min also frowned slightly. Of course it's not Yelu Qi or Xiaobian. I thought it was you who did it. Since you say it's not, then it's worth thinking about. Yelu Yisin has political enemies in Shangjing, but I can't think of anyone who would dare to kill his only son and do something so irreconcilable. Yes, the waters in Shangjing are getting muddier. Looking into the distance, Song Qing-shu's expression was also grave. Zhao Min muttered to herself for a moment and suddenly said, I haven't been able to find any news of Murong Jingyue. I suspect that he might be hiding in the Imperial Palace. Tonight, you and I will go to the Imperial Palace to investigate. Song Qing-shu was dumbfounded. He remembered that he and Xia Qingqing had agreed to go to the Imperial Palace to look for Yuan Qingji that night. If the girls met up at that time, although they might not end up fighting, that kind of scene would not feel good. Why? You don't want to? Zhao Min frowned slightly. That's not it. Song Qing-shu reacted quickly and quickly found an excuse. After all, the palace is heavily guarded. It's fine if I go in and out alone, but if I bring someone with me, the probability of being discovered will be greatly increased. It would not be good if I act rashly and alert the enemy. Zhao Min looked at him indifferently. After a long time, she nodded and said, What you said is not unreasonable. How about this? You can go and investigate by yourself. The palace is so big, and it will be faster for you to go alone. When the time comes, you can search carefully to see if there are any clues. Song Qing-shu secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Zhao Min did not insist. Otherwise, he really did not know how to deal with the situation. I'll go check on the Shisha diplomatic mission first to see if they have anything to do with this murder case. I have a feeling that the murderer this time is inextricably linked to Murong Jingyue, Song Qing-shu said. That's good. Anyway, we don't have any clues about Murong Jingyue for the time being. It's easier to analyze with more information. Zhao Min agreed. Although she was smart enough, she couldn't speculate where Murong Jingyue was hiding without enough information. When Song Qing-shu was about to walk out of the pavilion, Zhao Min suddenly said, If you don't come back at night, remember to inform me in advance. I waited for you all night yesterday. Song Qing-shu looked back in surprise. Zhao Min had already picked up a cup of tea and drank it as if she hadn't said a word. Song Qing-shu suddenly felt very soft. What she said just now was like a wife saying to her husband who didn't come back at night, What are you waiting for? Go and check. Zhao Min didn't know why she said that. She had to hide the blush on her face by drinking tea. But when she found that he kept staring at her, she couldn't help but become angry. Okay, I'll go. A smile gradually appeared on Song Qing-shu's face. He walked a few steps and then turned back. By the way, there's so many places to check in the Imperial Palace today. I probably won't come back. Zhao Min snorted coldly. It's none of my business whether you come back or not. Song Qing-shu's breath caught in his throat, but he liked her Sundra look very much. After Song Qing-shu came out of the small courtyard, He went all the way to the announcing emblem courtyard. The people of the Western Xia country's diplomatic corps were settled here. The one who killed Yilu Sui was neither Yilu, Qi, nor me. Maybe someone in the Western Xia country didn't want to see the marriage succeed. Thinking of the possibility that Xia Qingqing had mentioned before, Song Qingshu's eyes became sharp. He tiptoed and snuck in silently. He found that the soldiers of the announcing emblem courtyard were almost twice as many as usual. Maybe too many things had happened in Shangjing recently. First, the Southern Song dynasty's diplomatic corps was robbed and killed. Then, Yilu Sui was also killed. They were worried that something might happen to the Western Xia country's diplomatic corps, so they sent more people to protect them. As he snuck in, he found that the people of the Western Xia country's diplomatic corps were gathered in a study. There were also Western Xia soldiers guarding outside. But this was not a problem for Song Qingshu. He quickly found a gap between the guards and cut in. Then he hung upside down under the beam outside the window and began to eavesdrop. With his current skills, even if there was a wall between them, the conversation inside could not be hidden from his ears. There are more and more chitin soldiers outside. Duan Yanqing's voice was very distinctive. Humph, they keep saying that they are here to protect us. We have so many masters here. Why do we need them to protect us? I think they are here to monitor us. Yunzhonghe's shrill and feminine voice was also very obvious. Well, it's none of our business whether they are protecting us or monitoring us. There's no need to shout. Princess Yinchuan's clear voice rang out. Yes. Although Yunzhonghe was lustful, he did not dare to have any disrespectful thoughts in front of this incomparably beautiful Princess Yinchuan. How could he dare to say no after hearing her words? I'm curious about who killed Yilu Sui this time. Was it because of Yilu Yisin, or did they want to ruin the marriage between our Western Xia and Liao? Li Qinglu stood up and opened the window. She said with a frown. Fortunately, Song Qingshu sensed that she was coming to the window. He curled his abdomen in advance and tightly clung to the roof beam. Today, Li Qinglu was wearing a traditional Western Xia dress. She wore a red dress, and her hair was combed into countless delicate braids. She really looked like a fairy in flames. However, Song Qingshu had no time to appreciate her beauty. He was worried that she would suddenly raise her head. If that happened, he would have nowhere to hide. Hearing her words, Song Qingshu understood that Yilu Sui's death was not caused by the Western Xia's envoy. Is it possible that Prince Liang is behind this? Yi Ernyang said hesitantly. Li Qinglu glanced at her and said lightly, Prince Liang is the pillar of our Xia kingdom. How could he do this kind of thing that is detrimental to the national interests? Don't mention this kind of thing again. Yes. Being glanced at by her, Yi Ernyang felt a chill in her heart. She hurriedly bowed and said yes. Outside the window, Song Qingshu secretly thought that the Prince Liang mentioned by Yi Ernyang was the younger brother of the Western Xia Emperor. It seemed that he was also interested in inheriting the throne. Naturally, he did not want to see the crown prince get strong support through the marriage. Li Qinglu immediately stopped her from continuing. This was also a common practice. She was probably afraid that there were spies in the room, so she deliberately said such words to numb him. Is it really a power struggle within the Western Xia kingdom? Song Qingshu frowned. He always felt that it was not so simple. Suddenly, Li Qinglu said, Relatively speaking, I am more suspicious that it was done by the Jin kingdom. After all, the Jin kingdom and the Liao kingdom are enemies. Destroying the marriage between the two countries is the most beneficial for the Jin kingdom. Outside the window, Song Qingshu secretly shook his head. This time, the Jin kingdom did want to destroy the marriage between the two countries, but they sent me. The branch of the washing clothes brothel in Shangjing City is under my control. They did not do it all. Li Qinglu then said, Also, in the Southern Song dynasty, I saw traces of the Imperial City Department in Shangjing City not long ago. You should know that the Imperial City Department is full of the Shui family, and the Shui family is Jia Shidao's ally. If the marriage is successful, then the Jin kingdom and the other countries will be doomed. Han Xingzhou, who presided over the Southern Song dynasty's northern expedition, will also rise. I am sure that Jia Sherdao will not want to see this situation. Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat. Yes, Shui's people had just killed the Southern Song Dynasty's delegation. According to Qin Keqing, they were here for the Mandarin duck knife. This time, it was very likely that he was the one who killed Yelu Sui and stole the knife. With a plan in mind, when Li Qinglu turned around, Song Qingshu took the opportunity to leave the announcing emblem yard and then went to the place where Shui Yi's people were staying. When he found the place, he was surprised to find that Qin Keqing and the others were already gone. What surprised him even more was that they did not change places voluntarily. The room was in a mess. Many tables, chairs, and windows were broken. Obviously, there had been a fierce fight. There was a lot of dark red blood on the floor. He did not know whether it was Qin Keqing's or the attackers. I wonder if Qin Keqing is okay. Song Qingshu did not care about the others, but he had a relationship with Qin Keqing after all. But then he thought about it. Shui's people were very good at martial arts, and Jiajin's martial arts were also good in the martial arts world. It should not be difficult for him to protect his companions. Who attacked them? Song Qingshu felt more and more clearly that there was a mysterious force in Shangjing City that was like a giant beast that chose people to devour. Unfortunately, he still knew nothing about it. After looking around again, he still could not find any valuable clues. Song Qingshu could only return to the washing clothes yard stronghold and go to the palace with Xia Qingqing to solve Yuan Qingji's matter first. Upon seeing him return, be it the lively Xia Qingqing or the cold, icy snow, both revealed a hint of delight. Did you find anything? Song Qingshu roughly told them the information he got from the Xixia diplomatic mission and what he saw in the stronghold of the imperial city. Of course, he did not mention the matter with Zhao Min. Now, it seems that the clues are broken again. Icy Snow sighed softly. She blamed herself for losing her husband's treasured saber. Song Qingshu hurriedly comforted her. Don't worry, I will find the Cold Moon saber. Thank you, Qingshu, Icy Snow said softly. Song Qingshu smiled mischievously. Sister-in-law, how do you plan to thank me? Noticing Xia Qingqing's playful gaze, Icy Snow blushed. You are always so frivolous. Song Qingshu laughed. Sister-in-law, take your time to think about it. When Qingqing and I come back from the palace, we will look for you. After saying that, he left with Xia Qingqing. This person, Icy Snow, stamped her feet and blushed as she watched the two disappear. But no matter how cold her temperament was, she was still a young and upright woman. When she thought of what happened that night, her heart could not help but beat faster. Chapter 15-17. After they went out, Xia Qingqing suddenly frowned and said, Brother Song, the palace is so big. Where are we going to find her? That's simple. Song Qingshu smiled. Since Xiao Ban and the identity of the country's father-in-law has been exposed, it's clear that the one who came to save him that night was his daughter, Xiao Zhonghui, who is now in Fei. This also explains why the people in prison were so respectful to her. At the same time, he thought to himself, Xiao Ban and Xiao Zhonghui are both characters in Mandarin Duck Saber. He didn't expect that coming to Shangjing this time would trigger the plot of the book. However, her identity was very different from the original work. Xiao Zhonghui actually became the imperial concubine, and according to the previous information, concubine would seem to have given birth to a son for the emperor. The circle of nobles is really messy. Song Qingshu could only complain like this. They had spent a lot of time on the Xixia diplomatic mission and the stronghold of the Imperial City Department. Now that night was gradually falling, it was a good time to sneak into the palace. Song Qingshu had already forgotten how many times he had sneaked into the Imperial Palace. Although he had Xia Qingqing with him this time, he was still very familiar with the place. He avoided the layers of patrolling Imperial Palace guards, as if he had foresight. Brother Song, you are so amazing. Xia Qingqing couldn't help but feel stars in her eyes when she saw Song Qingshu casually walking in and out of the palace, which was regarded as a dangerous place by the people of Jianghu. Song Qingshu smiled and said, You said this more than once last night. You are so annoying. Xia Qingqing blushed and punch him a few times in embarrassment. Song Qingshu laughed and held her slender waist as they flew toward the inner palace. On the way, he subdued a palace maid and asked for the location of concubine Wen's palace. Then he used the soul transfer technique to erase her memory. Seeing him do all of this with ease, Xia Qingqing said sourly, "You're really too capable. If you use this trick, it'll be easy for you to get any woman." Song Qingshu pinched her cheek and said, "So if you choose Yuan Qingji, I will use this trick to take you back." Bah! Xia Qingqing spat and didn't take it to heart. Although they were not husband and wife, they were closer than husband and wife. They were familiar with each other's jokes. Soon, they found concubine Wen's palace. Although there were many palaces in the inner palace, many concubines had to share a courtyard with other people. Those who had their own palace were all concubines with high status. Concubine Wen's palace was in a very good location, and it was magnificent. It was only second to the Empress's palace. It was the Empress concubine Xiao. Song Qingshu brought Xia Qingqing to the back of the roof. This time, the two of them had specially changed into black clothes so that it would be hard for them to be discovered if they hid on the roof at night. The roof of the imperial palace was made of glazed tiles, and the structure was ingenious. Naturally, it couldn't be taken down as easily as it was in a normal house. However, this wasn't a problem for Song Qingshu. He used his internal energy to break 2 tiles. At the same time, under the protection of his internal energy, the broken pieces wouldn't fall and alert others. Looking down through the gap, he saw a group of palace maids helping a woman take off her daytime clothes and jewelry. Although Song Qingshu had only seen half of her face the last time, he still recognized her at a glance as the woman in the prison that night. Although she couldn't be called an outstanding beauty, her skin was white, and she had almond eyes and cherry lips. She was a beauty. Song Qingshu wanted to look again, but Xia Qingqing covered his eyes. "Don't look, I have to change clothes." Song Qingshu couldn't help but laugh, but he didn't object. If he was here alone, he would naturally follow the creed that it would be a waste not to look. However, now that he was with his female companion, it was naturally inconvenient for him to look. After the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, Xia Qingqing let go. Song Qingshu looked down and found that Xiao Zhonghui had changed into a set of home clothes. She was holding a baby in her arms, looking like a good wife and loving mother. "You can all leave." Xiao Zhonghui waved her hand to the palace maids in the room. But Prince Jean, a servant next to her, pointed at the baby in her arms, wanting to say something but hesitating. So her son is Prince Jean. It seems that Xiao Zhonghui is really favored. On the roof, Song Qingshu secretly thought. It should be known that a prince would only be conferred the title of prince when he came of age. There were very few who were conferred the title of prince at such a young age. This was enough to prove how much the emperor liked the mother and son. Xiao Zhonghui said lightly, "I'll take care of them for a while. I'll call you later." Yes, the servant didn't dare to say anything else. After bowing, she left with the other palace maids. Xiao Zhonghui went over and locked the door. After confirming that everyone had left, she said, "Big brother Yuan, come out." Just as she finished speaking, a man flashed out from behind the screen. It was Yuan Qingji. Xia Qingqing looked at Song Qingshu in shock. What surprised her was not only seeing Yuan Qingji again, but seeing him in the palace of an imperial concubine. It should be known that the imperial palace was always guarded against men. If there was nothing important, even imperial guards and imperial physicians were not allowed to enter the inner palace. Now, Yuan Qingji appeared in the palace of an imperial concubine in the middle of the night. A man and a woman alone couldn't help but make people think. Song Qingshu also had a playful look on his face. It could be seen that the relationship between the two was very good. This Yuan Qingji was really lucky with women. Everywhere he went, there would be beautiful girls. Little Ao is really cute. After Yuan Qingji came out, he looked at the baby in her arms. His eyes were full of love. Seeing him, the child giggled. Xiao Zhonghui's face was filled with the glory of a mother. "Little Ao, this is your Uncle Yuan." Hearing her call him Big Brother Yuan, Xia Qingqing's face darkened. Before, she thought that Yuan Qingji lost his memory. She didn't expect that he just didn't want to recognize her. Yuan Qingji picked up the child and raised him to the sky to tease him. One big and one small, the two smiled one after another. Obviously, they were really happy. On the roof, Song Qing-shu had a strange look on his face. He thought that they were happy as if they were a family. This Prince Jin wouldn't be Yuan Qingji's son, right? As if she heard his thoughts, Xiao Zhonghui suddenly sighed faintly. AI, it's a pity that little Ao is not your son. Yuan Qingji walked over with the child in his arms and comforted her. Little Hui, why do you say that? Since he is your son, what's the difference between him and my son? Big brother Yuan, Xiao Zhonghui was touched. She walked over and gently hugged him. On the roof, Song Qingshu's expression became more and more strange. This scene reminded him of the TV series Wind and Cloud in his past life, where Bu Jingyun and Jian Chen shouted, "I'm a father," at the same time. He couldn't bear to look at it. On the side, Xia Qingqing lightly bit her lips. Even though she had made up her mind to cut off all ties with Yuan Qingji, seeing her husband hugging another woman so intimately, she couldn't help but feel a little jealous. Suddenly, Xiao Zhonghui raised her head and bit her lips. She looked at Yuan Qingji and said in a small voice, "Big brother Yuan, I actually don't need to keep my virginity for Yelu Hongji. If you want, I can." Yuan Qingji's expression turned serious, and he quickly pushed her away. "Little Hui, how could I do that to you?" On the roof, Song Qingshu looked like he was about to give in. He said to Xia Qingqing, "This Yuan Qingji, the girl has already taken the initiative to throw herself into his arms, but he's still pretending." Xia Qingqing blushed and said, "Big brother Yuan is a gentleman. Do you think everyone is like you?" Song Qingshu smiled nonchalantly and pulled her into his arms. "If I don't do this, how can I be with you?" Xia Qingqing's heart was beating like crazy. She quickly tried to push him away. After all, her husband was still down there. No matter what choice she made, in the eyes of the world, she and Yuan Qingji were still husband and wife. Unfortunately, Song Qingshu's hands were like iron hoops, holding her tightly. She couldn't push him away at all. Suddenly, she felt a strange, warm current enter her body. She was stunned at first, then embarrassed. "Don't use the joyful internal energy." Song Qingshu retracted his fingers and whispered in her ear, "It's just a little joke." Even though it was only a touch, the internal energy of joyful was so overbearing that Xia Qingqing's body already had some reaction. Her eyes were watery, and she stared at him seductively. "Don't think I don't know what you're thinking." She had been with Song Qingshu for so long that she naturally knew of some of his indescribable habits. She wanted to push him away, but her body was very soft now. Instead, she leaned into his arms. "Don't do this." Xia Qingqing was really panicking. She was worried that he would be so bold as to do something here. Song Qingshu kissed her cheek lightly. "Don't worry, I'm not that ridiculous." However, he couldn't help but think of what happened with Huang Rong in the Jin Kingdom. For a moment, he couldn't help but feel his heart skip a beat. He really had the urge to do something. Fortunately, his willpower was not the same as before, and he finally gave up on that evil thought. In the room, Xiao Zhonghui spoke again. "Guannan, I've let you down. Previously, you wanted to take me far away, but I was worried that I would implicate my family, so I refused to elope with you. Now, you're staying in the palace for me, enduring such torment. How can I bear to do this?" "Guannan?" Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat. The male lead of Mandarin Duck Saber, Yuan Guannan. This wasn't the first time he had heard this name. He had felt it to be somewhat familiar before, and now he finally understood. Is he not Yuan Qingji, but just looks a little like him? Song Qingshu's heart was filled with doubt. He looked at Xia Qingqing in his arms, and saw that she also had a puzzled expression. "Xiao Hui, don't say that." Yuan Qingji finally spoke. "If you hadn't saved me back then, I would have died in the wilderness. I don't remember anything, but you didn't despise me at all. Not only did you give me a name, but you also took me to travel the world with you." Hearing him mention the past, Xiao Zhonghui giggled. "I was just soft-hearted for a moment, thinking that I had picked up a big idiot. Who knew that in the end, my heart would be unknowingly stolen by you? Xiao Hui, Yuan Qingji's eyes were full of tenderness. Song Qing finally understood. It seemed that Yuan Guannan was Yuan Qingji. Back then, Yuan Qingji had been killed by Dongfang Muxue, but because of the miraculous 9 transformations immemorial art, he had come back to life. However, his brain had been damaged and he had lost his memory. He had probably been rescued by Xiao Zhonghui when he was wandering the world, and the two of them had quickly fallen in love. Unfortunately, Xiao Zhonghui had been chosen to enter the palace as an imperial concubine. Yuan Qingji wanted to take her away, but she was worried that she would implicate her family, so Yuan Qingji had no choice but to follow her into the palace. Chapter 15:18. Speaking of which, Yuan Qingji in this world is a bit bitter. Song Qingshu sighed inwardly. First, he died at the hands of Dongfang Muxue. Then, he took over his wife. Now that he had found a new lover, he could only watch her being doted on by another man. However, on second thought, in this world where imperial power was supreme, Xiao Zhonghui was still able to maintain her true feelings for him. She was even willing to risk death by 1,000 cuts to have a rendezvous with him. There were probably not many men in this world who were as lucky as her. Big brother Yuan. Xiao Zhonghui raised her head. A trace of determination suddenly appeared in her eyes. She directly untied her belt. Her outer clothes gradually slid down, revealing her round and fair shoulders. Xia Qingqing's face turned red. She hurriedly reached out to cover Song Qingshu's eyes. This made Song Qingshu both angry and amused. It's just a shoulder. If you see the girls in bikinis in my world, you'll dig my eyeballs out. Xia Qingqing spat and said in a low voice, I don't care. You can't look. Song Qingshu looked at her with a playful expression. Speaking of which, you're the one who shouldn't look. Your husband is flirting with another woman down there. Xia Qingqing glared at him. She was obviously unhappy that he deliberately mentioned the word husband. Let's go. Go. Song Qingshu was startled. Didn't you want to see Yuan Qingji? Xia Qingqing smiled. It's better to forget each other than to help each other in difficult times. Since big brother Yuan has found his true love, why should I disturb them? Won't I add to everyone's troubles? Song Qingshu looked at her in surprise. I didn't expect you to be so clear-minded now. Let's go. Xia Qingqing tried to pull him away. She glared at him. Do you still want to eavesdrop here? Song Qingshu sighed. I do want to eavesdrop, but your big brother Yuan is a blockhead. He may not be so understanding. Xia Qingqing was startled. She looked down and saw that Yuan Qingji was making excuses again. She couldn't help but feel angry and amused. What blockhead? She had already taken the initiative to this extent, but he was still making excuses. It really made people anxious. Let's go. There's no point in being anxious about their relationship. Song Qingshu held Xia Qingqing's hand. Okay. Xia Qingqing nodded. She looked at Yuan Qingji one last time. Since he had found his happiness, she should completely let go. Just like that, the two of them walked out of the imperial palace. At that moment, Xia Qingqing felt as if the boulder that had been weighing down on her heart had been lifted. Her entire body was incomparably relaxed. Along the way, she talked and laughed with Song Qingshu. Occasionally, she would even act spoiled in his arms. It was as if she had returned to her youth. Song Qingshu's expression suddenly changed, and he pulled Xia Qingqing to hide in the shadows of an artificial mountain. Xia Qingqing's heart jumped. She thought that he was going to do something there, and her face instantly turned red. Big Brother Song was becoming more and more preposterous, but at the same time, she faintly felt some anticipation. Very quickly, there was a hubbub of voices. Xia Qingqing paused, and only then did she realize that there was a large group of guards jogging towards the inner palace. Only then did she realize that she had been thinking wrongly. She couldn't help but secretly stick out her tongue, secretly rejoicing that Song Qingshu didn't know what she had been thinking. Song Qingshu said in a low voice, from the direction they are running, they're most likely going to consort one. Xia Qingqing was still immersed in embarrassment and hadn't reacted yet. Song Qing-shu explained. Xiao Ban was accused of participating in the rebellion. I'm afraid his daughter, Xiao Zhonghui, has been implicated. Ah, then they're in danger. She thought about how Xiao Zhonghui and Yuan Qingji were having a rendezvous in the room. If these guards went over, wouldn't they run right into them? She wanted to go back and warn them, but then she thought about how she had just said she would let go. If she heard that her husband was in danger and rushed back, what would she do to Song Qing-shu? For a moment, she couldn't help but freeze where she was. Song Qing-shu seemed to know what she was thinking. He said with a smile, "Let's go back and take a look." "Thank you, big brother Song," Xia Qingqing said, choking with sobs. She knew that Song Qing-shu and Yuan Qingji didn't have any friendship. To a certain extent, they were enemies. Back in Jinling, Yuan Qingji's group had set up a trap to kill him. At the Mount Tai conference, he had gathered experts from various sects to attack him. Right now, Song Qing-shu had saved him completely because of the gathering. Song Qing-shu wiped away the tears on her face. "All right, I don't want you to cry for another man." Xia Qingqing pursed her lips. "I'm crying for you." Song Qing-shu laughed. "It's worth it for you to say that." With that, he held her soft waist and rushed to where concubine one was. But when they arrived, they discovered that they were still a step too late. It turned out that there were a few groups of guards that came from a few other directions and rushed to surround Wan Fei's bedroom. Now Yuan Qingji was protecting Xiao Zhonghui behind him and was confronting a group of guards. Song Qing-shu thought to himself, "I wonder how far the two of them have progressed in the room. Could they have been interrupted by these palace guards while they were in the midst of their infatuation? That would be terrible." Back then, Zhao Go was in the middle of pampering his concubine when the Jin soldiers suddenly came and scared him to death. However, when he looked carefully, he found that the two of them were dressed neatly. It didn't seem like they had dressed in a hurry. His admiration for Yuan Qingji rose in his heart. Although he had lost his memory, he was still a noble gentleman. "Yuan Guanan, how dare you sneak into the concubine's palace? Do you know that this is a crime punishable by execution?" The leaders of the guards looked at each other. This time, they were ordered to capture concubine Wen. Who knew that they would run into such a thing? It should be known that the less people knew, the safer it was in the palace. Now that there was a scandal about the palace, how could they not be shocked? If it wasn't for the fact that there were enough people present, they might even be worried that they would be killed by the emperor. Xiao Zhonghui's face was extremely pale. At this time, her delicate body was slightly trembling in the cold wind. On the contrary, Yuan Qingji was calmer. He replied in a clear voice, "Reporting to Commander Xiao, this subordinate accidentally saw a man in black sneaking into concubine Wen's palace. I was worried that concubine Wen was in danger, so I hurried over." Song Qing-shu, who was hiding not far away, gave Xia Qingqing a thumbs up and said with a light smile, "The one surnamed Yuan might be a blockhead when it comes to relationships, but his reaction isn't slow. There aren't many people in the world with this kind of adaptability." Of course, in the past, Brother Yuan led a motley crew to contend with the Manchurian Qing for many years. Xia Qingqing's expression was faintly proud, but she quickly became dispirited. But the present situation, I'm afraid it isn't something that can be explained with just a few words. The leaders of the guards exchanged glances and said in a cold voice, "Did anyone else see that black-clothed person?" Yuan Qingji's breathing stopped. In the end, he slowly shook his head. "The situation was urgent, and I didn't have time to notify my companions." In the distance, Song Qing-shu made a light sound of surprise. From their conversation, Yuan Qingji's identity on the surface is a guard of the Imperial Palace. That's right, that's the only way he can stay in the Imperial Palace for a long time and live together with concubine Wen. At the side, Xia Qingqing anxiously pulled on his sleeve. "Brother Song, what should we do now?" Song Qing-shu patted her hand. "Don't panic. Let's first see how the situation develops. We didn't have time to notify our companions." One of the leaders of the guards snorted. "This is only your side of the story. Right now, we don't see the black-clothed person. We only see that you are in her ladyship's palace." Yuan Qingji had a troubled expression on his face. He had been too careless today. He hadn't expected so many guards to suddenly charge at him, making it impossible for him to leave. Looking at the current situation, he could only kill his way out. However, this would harm Xiao Hui, and he didn't know if she would be willing to leave with him. "You have nothing to say, right?" The leader of the guards snorted. Just as he was about to give the order to capture him, a black shadow suddenly flashed not far away. A black-clothed person suddenly appeared and fled in another direction. There really is a black-clothed person? Not just the guards present. Even Yuan Qingji and Xiao Zhonghui were dumbfounded. Split into a small group to chase that black-clothed person, the leader of the guards quickly ordered. Very quickly, a group of guards chased in the direction that the black-clothed person had fled in. However, there were still 100 or so guards left behind. Yuan Qingji frowned. "What is the meaning of this? Why aren't you chasing after the assassin? There's still so many people here." The leader of the guards sneered. "Because this time, we are under orders to capture consort Wen Yang. As soon as these words came out, Yuan Qingji and Xiao Zhonghui's expressions changed. Xiao Zhonghui stepped forward and said, "May I know what crime Bin Gong has committed that requires the generals to come here?" She had been a Gui Fei for more than a year. Every movement she made had a graceful and luxurious aura, causing many of the guards to lower their heads. "We are under orders from Zhua Ili Darren. There is a case that requires her ladyship to investigate." Another small leader of the guards replied. Yuan Qingji snorted and stood in front of Xiao Zhonghui. "Preposterous. Consort Wen is of noble birth and noble status. Emirzwa Ili Bai. What right does he have to control her ladyship? To say the least, even if her ladyship really did commit a crime, there is the Great Secret Bureau. How could Emir Ili Bai Court intervene?" Ili Bai Court was Liao's Ministry of Justice. The Great Secret Bureau was in charge of the affairs of the imperial family and the empress. Therefore, Yuan Qingji felt it was strange. How could he allow these people of unknown origin to take Xiao Zhonghui away? The leader of the guards waved a gold medal in his hand. "This is the emperor's personal order. Ili Bai Court has full authority to handle this matter. Anyone who dares to obstruct will be killed." In addition, Yuan Guanan has been in and out of the empress consort's bedroom. He is suspicious. Arrest him and send him to Ili Bai Court. I wish all readers a happy National Day. Chapter 1519. When Song Qingshu came back and saw the tense situation, he couldn't help but be startled. "What's going on?" It turned out that the man in black just now was him in disguise to help Yuan Qingji out. After he led the pursuers around, he used his qinggong to shake off the people behind him and quietly circled back. As soon as he circled back, he saw the scene in front of him. It seems that these guards want to capture Wen Fei. Xia Qingqing frowned and told him what had just happened. Song Qingshu also felt that it was strange. Even if there really was a case involving Wen Fei, she was of noble status. Logically, the Ministry of Justice shouldn't be involved. At this time, the group of guards was closing in. If they took a few more steps forward, no matter how high their martial arts were, they would be cut to death in a flurry of swords and spears. Although Yuan Qingji lost his memory, he still had the instincts of a master. He quickly realized this and hurriedly said to Xiao Zhonghui behind him, "Xiao Hui, now that things have come to this, I will take you to kill your way out." Unexpectedly, Xiao Zhonghui shook her head. "No, if I leave, I will implicate my parents and family." The main reason why she married the emperor, even though she loved Yuan Qingji, was mainly because of this. Yuan Qingji hurriedly said, "But I heard that your father was involved in a case of rebellion. Originally, we didn't think it was a big deal, but now that people are directly sent to capture you, I think the destruction of your family is a foregone conclusion. At this time, if one can leave, then one can leave." Xiao Zhonghui still shook her head. "After all, I gave birth to the emperor's son. For Xiao Ao's sake, the emperor won't do anything to me. Instead, if I escape, then it will be hard to explain." Not far away, Song Qingshu secretly shook his head. After all, Yuan Qingji used to dominate a region. In this short period of time, he had already seen through the interests of the situation. On the contrary, Xiao Zhonghui was still a bit soft-hearted. At this time, she still fantasized about using her son to clear the injustice of the family. It was really a bit ridiculous. Big brother Yuan, why don't you leave first? Xiao Zhonghui also understood that she might be able to use her son to avoid punishment, but not Yuan Qingji. If something happened to him, it would be too late for regrets. Yuan Qingji had a conflicted look on his face. Clearly, he didn't know whether he should forcibly take her away or leave on his own. While he was hesitating, the soldiers around him had already surrounded him. The spears in their hands were about to pierce his body. He instinctively waved his hand and broke the long spear that was reaching in front of him. However, this instantly poked the hornet's nest. The guards no longer held back and swarmed towards him. Yuan Qingji's expression changed, and he waved his palm to deflect the dozens of spears on his left. Then, he leapt onto the spears on his right and jumped out of the encirclement. Before those people could react, Yuan Qingji's palms kept slapping those people to the north. More than 10 imperial bodyguards on the right immediately fell to the ground, heavily injured. Although they didn't die, they lost the ability to fight. Song Qingshu inwardly nodded. Martial arts experts were most afraid of being surrounded by soldiers and having no space to display their skills. At that time, even the most skilled martial artist would be chopped into meat paste. Yuan Qingji borrowed the force to jump out of the encirclement in the nick of time. Whether it was his eyesight or his qigong, they were both top-notch. Moreover, looking at the strength of his palms, it seemed that he was a realm higher than when he was on Mount Tai. Those imperial bodyguards cried out. Unfortunately, Yuan Qingji had the upper hand. He didn't give them the slightest chance to catch their breath. He grabbed a knife and instantly killed more than 10 people. Those imperial bodyguard leaders could no longer sit still. One by one, they pulled out their knives and rushed forward. Unfortunately, Yuan Qingji had learned the lightning changes of interchangeability, one of the world's top qigong. His whole body was like a loach in the water. They couldn't surround him at all. Instead, with a flurry of attacks, another 10 or 20 people fell to the ground. Even a few of the imperial bodyguard leaders were injured. Big Brother Yuan's martial arts have actually improved so much. Xia Qingqing, who was not far away, was pleasantly surprised. She didn't expect that he would be able to easily deal with this 100-man team. The 9 transformations art of origin is quite interesting. Song Qingshu secretly nodded. Previously, Yuan Qingji could be considered a top-notch expert in Jianghu with the Huashan sect's martial arts, the lightning changes of interchangeability, and the golden snake sword technique. However, compared to a grandmaster, he was still a little lacking. Now, Yuan Qingji was not afraid of grandmaster at all. In fact, in terms of inner power alone, he was even stronger than many grandmaster experts. However, in this world, the higher one's inner power was, the more powerful one would be. Of course, this time, the reason why Liao's team of imperial bodyguards lost so miserably was because they were not prepared at the beginning. Originally, they were only here to capture a concubine. Sending a few dozen people was already a huge effort. They didn't expect that Yuan Qingji was actually an expert among experts. If they had brought bows and arrows, shields, and the like, they wouldn't be in such a difficult situation. Seeing that Yuan Qingji was about to deal with this group of imperial bodyguards, suddenly an angry roar rang out. A tall and sturdy figure rushed out from the side and attacked Yuan Qingji. Before the person arrived, the strong wind that he brought with him made the faces of many imperial bodyguards hurt. Feeling the other party's aura, Yuan Qingji was secretly shocked. He didn't dare to be careless and let go of the imperial bodyguard leaders, focusing all of his attention on dealing with this person. The two of them fought, and the surrounding imperial bodyguards who couldn't dodge in time were either sent flying or had their bones and tendons broken. Very quickly, the group of imperial bodyguards hurriedly retreated tens of feet away. Even some of the people who were injured earlier struggled to crawl out of the battle circle, afraid that they would be caught in the crossfire. It's actually him. Song Qingshu couldn't help but be a little surprised. This expert who suddenly joined him was none other than Xiao Yuanshan, whom he had met before. Why is he in the palace? Just as Song Qing-shu was feeling puzzled, he heard the words of the imperial bodyguards and roughly understood. It turned out that Xiao Yuanshan was now Liao's imperial inspector, the head of the imperial bodyguards. After disappearing for tens of years, as soon as he returned, he took on such an important position. Song Qing-shu was a little confused about Liao's official position arrangement, but when he thought about how Xiao Yuanshan was the head instructor of Liao's Shan army before the incident, and how he was now promoted to imperial inspector, it made sense. Perhaps it's more to rope in the king of the southern courtyard, Xiao Feng. Song Qing-shu guessed. The current emperor of Liao, Yalu Hongji, favored Xiao Feng incomparably. The king of the southern courtyard was originally not among the top 5 in terms of power in Liao, but because of this emperor's favor, the common people forcefully regarded Xiao Feng as the second most powerful person in Liao. In this short period of time, the two of them had already fought for tens of rounds. Even Song Qing-shu, who was so far away, could feel the wind from their fists and kicks. Big brother Song, who will win and who will lose in the end? Xia Qingqing, who was at the side, could not help but ask. The two figures exchanged blows, and in the end, it was impossible to see who was who. Xia Qingqing could not help but ask. Song Qing-shu said in a low voice, after Yuan Chengji underwent nirvana with the 9 transformations immemorial technique. There are few in Jianghu who can match him in terms of internal energy. However, he has lost his memories after all, and in the past, he could only use many of his martial arts instinctively. In addition, he could not use the golden snake sword technique, which has the highest attack power. If they only fight with fists and kicks, I'm afraid he is not Xiao Yuanshan's match. Right now, he is only relying on his incomparably vigorous internal energy to fight evenly with Xiao Yuanshan. In another 200 or 300 moves, if his internal energy is slightly lacking, I'm afraid he will lose. Xia Qingqing exclaimed. Even though she had already said that she had completely severed ties with Yuan Qingji, he was still her husband. Seeing him in danger, she could not help but worry for him. Song Qing-shu continued. Actually, even if he has the golden snake sword in his hand, it will not help. Right now, with Xiao Yuanshan holding him back and an endless stream of guards rushing over, I'm afraid he will not be able to leave today. Just as he finished speaking, a large group of guards had already jogged in. The person in the lead was Xiao 11th Lang, whom they had met before. With a wave of his hand, the guards under him spread out, vaguely surrounding the two people in the center, ready to step forward and help at any time. There's actually such an expert among the guards in the palace. Seeing Yuan Qingji make his move, Xiao 11th Lang could not help but feel a little excited at the sight of his prey, as if he had an urge to draw his sword. As the deputy inspector of the front palace department, he had naturally seen Yuan Qingji before. It was just that he had not expected the other party to have been hiding his strength all this time. The one with the surname Yuan, if you don't stop now, don't blame us for being impolite. A vicious voice rang out, mixed with the shocked cry of a woman. Yuan Qingji turned his head to look and saw a minor commander holding a sword to Xiao Zhonghui's neck. With just the slightest bit of force, Xiao Zhonghui would die. Xiao Hui. Yuan Qingji could not help but be shocked and angry. After the initial panic, Xiao Zhonghui gradually calmed down. In a cold voice, she said, "Saba, how dare you? A mere commander of the palace guards dares to hold me hostage? Saba, what a lousy name." In the shadows, Song Qing-shu criticized incessantly. However, judging from the other party's attire, he should be a mid-level officer in the palace guards. As for that strange name, Liao was, after all, a country established by the Khitans. Many of the Khitans' names were very different from the Han people's naming conventions. Hearing Xiao Zhonghui's words, Saba laughed sinisterly and said, "Your ladyship, why continue putting on airs here? After today, you might not even be the ladyship anymore." Xiao Zhonghui's heart sank, and she could not help but feel frightened. What did his words mean? Could it be that he had obtained some inside information, and her father's case was developing in a disadvantageous direction? However, Even so, she was still not very flustered. After all, she had Prince Jean as her trump card. As long as she saw the Emperor, he would remember their past kindness. Saba, however, no longer paid attention to her. Instead, he looked at Yuan Qingji, who was not far away. The one with the surname Yuan. If you don't surrender now, this sword of mine will no longer recognize you. Yuan Qingji looked over and could clearly see that there was already a shallow bloodstain on Xiao Zhonghui's fair neck. He could not help but be shocked and angry. He did not understand why Saba dared to be so impudent. Moreover, seeing that neither Xiao 11th Lang nor Xiao Yuanshan had any intention of stopping the other party, he did not know what to do for a moment. With hesitation in his heart, his movements naturally slowed down. In a battle between experts, there was only a thin line. Xiao Yuanshan found an opportunity and struck Yuan Qingji's chest with his palm. Then, he instantly used Formless Finger of Disaster to seal several major acupuncture points on Yuan Qingji's body. Even though Yuan Qingji had true energy protecting his body, he was still beaten until he violently vomited blood. At this time, the Imperial Guards who had been waiting at the side all rushed forward and brandished their swords at his body. In the blink of an eye, he would be chopped into meat paste. Chapter 1520. Seeing this scene, Xiao Zhonghui cried out. On the other side, Xia Qingqing also grabbed Song Qingshu's hand tightly, so nervous that she couldn't speak. Song Qingshu frowned, thinking that if she saw the scene of Yuan Qingji being hacked to death, she would probably be traumatized for the rest of her life. He raised his hand and prepared to secretly save him. At this moment, another voice rang out, "Stop!" The owner of the voice seemed to have some prestige. The guards all stopped and looked at the other party in confusion. Saba said in a low voice, "He appeared in the back palace late at night. This is no small matter. It's better to carefully investigate all the rights and wrongs." Both Xiao Yuanshan and Xiao 11th Lang secretly nodded. If they let him die like this, then the news of consort when meeting a man in the middle of the night would spread like wildfire. Without a witness, even if nothing happened, there would be trouble because of the rumors. Seeing that Yuan Qingji wouldn't die for the time being, Song Qingshu gave up on the idea of helping. Watching the guard detain Yuan Qingji and Xiao Zhonghui, Xia Qingqing couldn't help but ask, "Qingshu, what do we do now? Even if we want to save him, we can't do it in the palace. It'll cause too much of a commotion." Song Qingshu said in a low voice. Now that the guards of the palace had been completely mobilized, there were Imperial guards everywhere. If they went to save him now, it would be a direct confrontation with thousands of palace guards. Even if they were lucky enough to save him, they would then have to go into escape mode. Song Qingshu had secretly come to Shanjing this time. Now that he hadn't accomplished his mission, he naturally didn't want to lose the bigger picture because of small gain. Xia Qingqing clearly understood the stakes. She knew that making a move now was no different from throwing an egg against a rock. Although she wanted to save Yuan Qingji, she didn't want to see Song Qingshu in danger because of this. Don't worry. After they've been thrown into Ely Courtyard's prison, it'll be much easier to save them. Seeing her worried expression, Song Qingshu comforted her gently. "Thank you, big brother Song." Xia Qingqing wanted to say something, but stopped. She knew that Song Qingshu had no need to save Yuan Qingji at all. He had only helped out because of her. She was filled with gratitude, but she didn't know what to say. There are more and more guards. Let's leave this place first. Song Qingshu rubbed Xia Qingqing's hair and pulled her away. After leaving the Imperial Palace, Song Qingshu said to Xia Qingqing, "Qingqing, you go back and meet up with Icy Snow first. I'll go and inquire about the relevant information. After all, it's really strange that the dignified consort was captured by the Ely Courtyard. We'll discuss how to rescue her after we get enough information." "All right." Xia Qingqing nodded with a heavy heart. After taking 2 steps, Song Qingshu turned back and called out to her, "Qingqing, go back and wait for my news. Don't act rashly again." Seeing his serious expression, Xia Qingqing giggled. "Don't worry. I'm no longer the woman who would run off to be a princess. Right now, You're the most important. Song Qingshu smiled awkwardly. So you know what I want to say? Xia Qingqing rolled her eyes at him. I've been with you for so long. How could I not know what you're thinking? Don't worry, I'll wait for you in the courtyard. I want to act on my own. That's good. Song Qingshu finally relaxed. I'll come back to find you as soon as possible. After the two of them separated, Song Qingshu went straight to the Ruyang residence's secret hideout. Now that he was wandering around blindly in the middle of the night, it was more useful to ask for information from Zhao Min. Although the laundry yard also had a certain level of intelligence-gathering ability, they lacked a powerful leader. The speed and accuracy of obtaining information was much worse than the Mongolian side. Why are you back so soon? Zhao Min was organizing all sorts of clues in the study. She was a little surprised to see Song Qingshu come. After all, he had told her before that he might not be back tonight. You don't want me to come back? Song Qingshu teased. A hint of red flashed across Zhao Min's fair face, and she spat. You're always so frivolous. No wonder people in the Jianghu always have a bad reputation for you. That's all a misunderstanding of me, Song Qingshu said seriously. However, when he thought of his reputation in the Jianghu, to put it nicely, he was dissolute, but to put it bluntly, he was lustful, so he felt a lot of pressure. Zhao Min could not be bothered to argue with him. She snorted, Speak. You're back so early. You must have something to talk to me about. It's hard for a woman who's too smart to get married. Song Qingshu did not know how many times he had complained. You don't have to worry about that, Zhao Min replied calmly. Song Qingshu had to tell her what happened in the imperial palace, especially mentioning Yuan Qingji. Zhao Min snorted. No wonder you ran out in such a hurry. You wanted to make a beauty smile. Song Qingshu smiled awkwardly. He knew that with Zhao Min's intelligence, it would not be difficult for her to guess Xia Qingqing's existence. I'm very curious as to why the dignified Wen Fei would be captured by the Yili courtyard. Song Qingshu was worried that she would get to the bottom of it and hurriedly asked. Zhao Min answered, It's not surprising. According to the latest information, the Yili courtyard has the latest clue. The case of Yelu Qi and Xiaoban, his rebellion, is almost certain. What clue? Song Qingshu could not help but ask. After all, he did not believe that Yelu Qi would rebel. This is not clear at the moment, Zhao Min replied. It will take time to confirm. No matter how resourceful she was, it was impossible for her to get all the information so quickly. It was already very rare for her to know the latest development of the rebellion. Song Qingshu frowned, but Wen Fei is a noble. Even if she is involved in the case, it should be handled by the Taiyan division. Why would a place like the Yili courtyard handle it? This was what he was most confused about. How could a dignified and favored imperial concubine be investigated by the Yili courtyard like ordinary criminals? Zhao Min looked at him in surprise. So you still don't know? The current leader of the Taiyan division, Xiao Pidi, and Xiao Ban here are cousins. In order to avoid suspicion, the emperor naturally does not allow the Taiyan division to participate. From this point of view, the fate of Wen Fei and her father is not optimistic. Song Qingshu vaguely remembered that Su Yin used to be the leader of the Taiyan division. How did it become Xiao Pidi now? He did not know where Su Quan was now. Other than asking about Wen Fei, I'm afraid you came here because you can't decide whether to save him or not, Zhao Min suddenly said. Song Qingshu was startled and finally sighed. It seems that nothing can be hidden from you. Zhao Min stood up and chuckled. Not only are you not friends with Yuan Qingji, but they used to be enemies. What's more, he is Xia Qingqing's husband. Instead of taking the risk to save him, it is better to let nature take its course and let him die in the hands of Liao's people. Xia Qingqing can't blame you for anything. Song Qingshu's expression changed. In the end, he said, I'm not a saint. I'm indeed unwilling to take such a great risk to save an unrelated person. Besides, although he didn't finish, his meaning was clear. So you came here to ask for my opinion? Zhao Min said with a smile that was not a smile. Song Qingshu nodded. I am in the situation, and it is really difficult for me to make a rational judgment. The princess is unparalleled in wisdom. I believe you can give the most suitable suggestion. You are a cunning person, pushing everything to others. Zhao Min smiled, but the expression on her face showed that she did not mind. My suggestion is, of course, to save him. Oh, Song Qingshu looked at her in surprise. Her answer was really unexpected. Zhao Min paced back and forth in the study with her hands behind her back. She slowly analyzed. Yuan Qingji is not only Xia Qingqing's ex-husband, but he also has another troublesome identity. He is the former Golden Snake King. If Liao finds out about this identity and uses him as a bargaining chip to threaten the Golden Snake Camp, even if you control the Golden Snake Camp like an iron board, it will inevitably cause great turmoil in the Golden Snake Camp. Therefore, you need to save him and not let him be controlled by Liao's people. Song Qingshu nodded slowly. He had to admit that her analysis was very reasonable. Zhao Min continued. Of course, the risk of saving him is too great. In comparison, the best choice is to pretend to save him, but actually kill him in prison. This way, you can not only solve your worries, but also get Xia Qingqing's gratitude. It is really a good plan to kill two birds with one stone. Song Qingshu shook his head. Although I am a little hesitant, I will not do such a sinister thing. Don't mention it again. Soft-hearted. Zhao Min looked angry at his incompetence, but in her heart, there was a trace of relief. Although he lacks the boldness of a person who does not care about trifles, it is precisely because of this magnanimity in his bones that I can be assured to get along with him. If he is really that kind of ruthless and ambitious person, I think I will not. Zhao Min blushed and then continued. Not killing him is not a bad thing. On one hand, there will be another kind of harvest. On the other hand, Yuan Qingji is an honest person. If you have saved his life, I think he will not make irresponsible remarks about the Golden Snake Camp. Even if he regains his memory, because he has a new confidant like Wen Fei, he will most likely not hate you for stealing his wife. Song Qingshu was speechless. What do you mean by stealing my wife? Don't make it sound so bad. At that time, we all thought he was dead. Moreover, Qingqing and I also went through all kinds of hardships. But Zhao Min did not care at all. Humph, no matter how you explain it, it can't change the fact that you stole his wife. Song Qingshu opened his mouth, but the words he wanted to explain finally turned into a helpless, bitter smile. Zhao Min continued. On the other hand, now that we have lost the clues about Murong Jingwei, Wen Fei and her father, after all, are in high positions, maybe they will have some clues. She paused and then continued. Even if they do not have any clues, at least they know about the Mandarin duck knife. We have always been curious about the secret of the Mandarin duck knife. After listening to her words, Song Qingshu stood up. Since you have said so, then I will go and save him. Zhao Min stood beside him and said with a smile, in fact, you have already made a decision in your heart. I just gave you a reason. Song Qingshu was startled, and then a smile appeared on his face. If I want to play my thoughts to the zither, there are few bosom friends. Who will know when the string is broken? I did not expect to find a bosom friend like you in the world. Two bright red peach blossoms appeared on Zhao Min's white face. Bah, who is your bosom friend? Chapter 1521. After leaving Zhao Min's place, Song Qingshu returned to the laundry yard. Xia Qingqing was already waiting there. Song Qingshu was worried that something might happen if he waited too long, so he didn't have time to rest. He waved at her and said, "Let's go save Yuan Qingji." Icy Snow, who was at the side, roughly knew what happened from Xia Qingqing. She knew that Song Qingshu disregarded the past and went to save Yuan Qingji. She was even more impressed and felt that she didn't misjudge him. Seeing that they were about to leave, she hurriedly reminded, "Be careful." Song Qingshu laughed heartily and said, "Don't worry, sister-in-law. A mere Ely courtyard is nothing to me." Icy Snow's face was still a little flushed as she watched the two of them disappear. When she thought about the words sister-in-law, she was a little shaken. She secretly spat, "Tell this kid not to call me sister-in-law anymore." Her snow-white skin flashed with a blush, which was even more captivating. When Song Qingshu and Xia Qingqing arrived at the Yili courtyard, they realized that even though the place was heavily guarded, it was the second half of the night. It was obvious that the guards weren't increased because of the arrival of Wen Fei and the others. They quickly knocked out 2 guards, changed into their clothes, and snuck in. After all, the latter half of the night was the time when people were the most sleepy. Many of the guards inside were dozing off. Song Qing-shu and Luo Binghe managed to sneak in safely. Other than knocking out a few guards when they couldn't dodge, they didn't do much. When they arrived at the room where Yuan Qingji was locked up, they found him heavily injured and lying on the bed. Xia Qingqing hurriedly lowered her voice and shouted, "Big brother Yuan! Big brother Yuan?" After all, Yuan Qingji had a strong foundation in internal energy. Even though he was heavily injured, he didn't faint. When he heard someone calling him, he looked up blankly. When he saw Xia Qingqing, he couldn't help but be stunned. "It's you?" He remembered that she was the woman he met in the palace. At that time, she acted very strange when she saw him. Xia Qingqing was delighted to hear his words. She thought that he had regained his memory. However, when she saw the blank look in his eyes, she realized that he was probably only recalling what happened in the prison. She felt a little sad and answered, "Big brother Yuan, we're your old friends. We're here to save you." "An old friend?" Yuan Qingji was stunned, and a trace of confusion flashed across his face. He had no recollection of what had happened before, but now he had no time to ask about it. He hurriedly said, "Since you're my friends, can you help me save Xiao Hui, the woman in the cell over there?" Hearing his words, Xia Qingqing's heart ached. However, she suddenly realized that since she had already decided to follow Song Qing-shu, it would be even better if Yuan Qingji and Xiao Zhonghui had a happy ending. Thinking of this, she actually became a little happy. "Okay, we'll help you save her. Thank you for your righteousness." Yuan Qingji cupped his hands and said excitedly, "Gao Yi, I'm still by Jia." Song Qing-shu criticized endlessly in his heart. With a raise of his hand, a strand of sword chi sliced open the shackles on Song Qing-shu's hand. "Come with us to save her." Looking at the smooth fracture on the handcuffs in his hands, Yuan Qingji was shocked. As he walked out, he said in admiration, "Your martial arts are so high that I really admire you. Brother Yuan, you flatter me." Song Qing-shu smiled faintly. He thought that if Yuan Qingji knew about the various positions he had put his wife in, he would probably be even more shocked. However, he quickly realized that these thoughts of his were a little unbearable and hurriedly swept them out of his mind. The 3 of them arrived at Xiao Zhonghui's cell. After all, she was a dignified imperial concubine. Naturally, she was not in a messy cell like other prisoners. Instead, she was in a 5-star hotel. The windows were bright and clean, and there was even a silk quilt on the bed. Xiao Zhonghui was originally sitting in front of the window in a daze. When she suddenly heard movement, she turned around and saw the 3 people outside. She could not help but be surprised and happy. "Big brother Yuan?" "Xiao Hui." Yuan Qingji was also a little excited. If it were not for the iron bars blocking his way, he might have already rushed in. "They didn't make things difficult for you, did they?" Xiao Zhonghui had already run over and held Yuan Qingji's hand through the bars. "No, they were still quite polite to me." Seeing the young couple confess their feelings to each other, Song Qing-shu could not help but cough and interrupt them. "This is not the place to talk. If you have anything to say, you can say it outside." "Big brother Yuan, they are?" Xiao Zhonghui asked, in confusion. "They're my old friends." Yuan Qingji was about to introduce the 2 to her when his expression suddenly became awkward. "I'm sorry, I did not have the time to ask for your names. My surname is Song." Song Qing-shu's identity was sensitive at the moment, so it was not appropriate for him to reveal his real name. "I am." Xia Qingqing opened her mouth and, in the end, gave a brief introduction. "My surname is Xia." She was worried that if she said her name, Yuan Qingji would think of something. That would be bad. "Big brother Song, Miss Xia, you 2 are truly a match made in heaven." Yuan Qingji could see that the relationship between the 2 was not ordinary and was incomparably close, so he subconsciously complimented them. who knew that when these words fell into the ears of the two, their expressions would become extremely strange. Song Qingshu smiled. She and I are indeed in love. Being said like this in front of her husband, even if she knew that her husband had lost his memory and the relationship between the two was over, Xia Qingqing was still so embarrassed that she wanted to hide in a hole. At this time, Xiao Zhonghui had already understood why the two had come. She shook her head and said, "I appreciate your good intentions, but I cannot leave yet. If I leave, I really won't be able to clear my name even if I jump into the Yellow River. At that time, my father, mother, brothers and sisters, and even my entire family will be implicated by the emperor because of me. I cannot harm so many people for my own selfishness." Song Qingshu's eyes moved. He didn't expect Xiao Zhonghui to be such a saintly person. However, he thought about it again. In this era, the concept of family was very important. Especially when the emperor had a disagreement, he would execute 9 generations of the family. Her considerations were not unreasonable. But Yuan Qingji still wanted to dissuade her, but Xiao Zhonghui continued to say, "Don't worry, big brother Yuan. Although the emperor is temporarily deceived by villains, I gave birth to Prince Jin for the emperor. Because of this kindness, he will not do anything to our family. When a case is investigated, we will naturally be able to give justice to our family." Song Qingshu frowned his eyebrows. This case involved many forces. It was not simply a case of rebellion. However, he didn't have any strong evidence. He estimated that Xiao Zhonghui would not believe it. "What should we do now?" Xia Qingqing looked at him with a worried face. Song Qingshu smiled bitterly and said, "It depends on them to decide. We came to save them. We can't just tie them up and take them away." At this time, Xiao Zhonghui said, "I won't leave for the time being, but big brother Yuan is different. You can go with him first." Yuan Qingji shook his head. "No, I'll stay here with you." Xiao Zhonghui was anxious. "My identity is special. They won't embarrass me, but you." She didn't finish her words, but the meaning was already obvious. Yuan Qingji was still firm. "As long as I recover in 2 days, this cell can't hold me at all. At that time, I can leave whenever I want." Seeing the two of them affectionately being a pair of Mandarin ducks, Song Qingshu couldn't help but look at Xia Qingqing on the side, who knew that she was also looking at him. Since they had made up their minds, let's go. Seeing that the two of them had such deep feelings, Xia Qingqing was relieved. "I still have something to ask them." Song Qingshu remembered the purpose of coming this time. He stepped forward and asked, "Miss Xiao, do you know a person named Murong Jingwe?" "Murong Jingwe?" Xiao Zhonghui looked confused. "I've never heard of him." This answer was not unexpected. Song Qingshu continued to ask, "Then have you noticed that anyone in the palace has been acting strangely in the past 2 years?" He and Zhao Min analyzed that if Murong Jingwe wasn't hiding in the court, then it was very likely that he was hiding in the palace. Acting strangely? Xiao Zhonghui frowned in thought, and suddenly thought of something. Speaking of which, there really is such a person. Who is it? Song Qingshu was overjoyed and hurriedly asked. Xiao Zhonghui opened her mouth and was about to answer when there was suddenly an alarm not far away. "We found the body of a prison guard. Someone has snuck in. Hurry, 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 go in and see the situation." As soon as the voice fell, a flurry of footsteps rushed in. "Brother Song, let's go, or else it'll be too late." Xia Qingqing hurriedly pulled on Song Qingshu's arm. Song Qingshu wanted to ask again, but Xia Qingqing hurriedly said, "They're still here. We'll have a chance to ask again in the future. Let's leave this place first." Song Qingshu thought about it and agreed. If they continued to delay, they would come face to face with Liao soldiers. At that time, it would be hard to avoid a battle. Although he wasn't afraid, the chain reaction would lead to martial law in Shangjing. If they alarmed Murong Jingwe, who was hiding in the dark, it would be terrible. After all, that fellow was as sly as a fox. It wasn't easy to catch his tail, but if they scared him away, who knew where they could find him next time? After analyzing the pros and cons, Song Qingshu hurriedly bade farewell to the two and ran out with Xia Qingqing through a wooden window. Yuan Qingji took the opportunity to return to his cell and put on the shackles again. As Song Qingshu attracted most of the attention, no one noticed that he had left. Icy Snow had been waiting at the secret base of the laundry yard. When she saw that only the two of them had returned, she couldn't help but be startled. You didn't rescue him? Yes and no. Xiao Qingqing shook her head and roughly explained what happened just now. Icy Snow listened enviously and said, "The two of them are willing to live and die together. This relationship is really stronger than gold." Song Qingshu snorted in dissatisfaction. "If you're captured, I could do it too." Icy Snow shook her head slowly. "I understand your feelings for me, but to live and die together." She paused for a moment before continuing. "If you really live and die together with me, what will happen to all your female friends? I'm afraid even Qingqing won't let me go." Sister Snow, Xiao Qingqing stomped her feet in embarrassment after being teased by Icy Snow. Song Qingshu was also a little embarrassed. He was shouldering too many responsibilities now, and it was indeed difficult for him to live and die together with a woman. However, when he saw the faint smile on Icy Snow's face, he felt a little angry. He walked up to her and carried her horizontally. "We have been separated for too long. Our love has faded a little. It seems that we need to do something to replenish it. Happy Mid-Autumn Festival to all readers. Warm up your relationship with your little girlfriends." Chapter 1522. Icy Snow really didn't expect him to launch such a sudden attack, especially in front of Xia Qingqing. For a moment, she was embarrassed and annoyed. She subconsciously struggled, but she was hugged horizontally in his arms. Apart from kicking her legs, she couldn't break free at all. "Qingqing, it's getting late. Have a good rest first. I'll bring you to find someone to help you tomorrow," Song Qingshu said to Xia Qingqing while carrying Icy Snow. Icy Snow didn't dare to look at Xia Qingqing at all. She buried her face in Song Qingshu's chest like an ostrich. Looking at the two of them, Xia Qingqing's worried eyes couldn't help but turn into a teasing expression. Big Brother Song, accompany Big Sister Icy Snow tonight. Upon hearing her teasing, Icy Snow's teeth were about to shatter. She thought that this girl really wanted to see the world in chaos. Song Qingshu smiled and carried Icy Snow back to her room. When she heard the door close, Icy Snow couldn't hold it in anymore. "Qingshu, how can you fool around like this?" "Sister-in-law, how am I fooling around?" Song Qingshu sat on the bed with her in his arms and looked at her playfully. Icy Snow blushed. "Don't call me sister-in-law." Song Qingshu moved closer to her cheek and gently kissed her smooth, jade-like ears. "But you're clearly my sister-in-law. If Big Brother who was here, he would definitely kill you for seducing his widowed sister-in-law," Icy Snow said deliberately with a straight face. Icy Snow deliberately said with a straight face, but it was a pity that her voice trembled violently, betraying her cowardice. "Big Brother who can't beat me." Song Qingshu's nose moved back and forth on her hair, smelling the fragrance of her hair bun, and said somewhat jokingly, "Big Brother whose knife skills are godly, and he specializes in killing lecherous people." Icy Snow's eyes were filled with a layer of misty light. Under the candlelight, it was as if ice and snow had just melted. "Big Brother who isn't here anymore. I'm taking good care of sister-in-law on his behalf. How can I be a thief?" Song Qingshu laughed. Icy Snow looked down at the big hand that reached into her lapel and rolled her eyes at him resentfully. "Is this how you take care of me? Did you take care of her to bed?" Song Qingshu did not seem to mind at all. Sister-in-law is still young. How cruel it would be to let her grow old with such a good body. Sister-in-law will inevitably feel lonely in the dead of night and need someone to accompany her. If she takes advantage of an outsider, she might ruin Big Brother whose reputation. Since that's the case, it's better to keep the goodies to herself. A trace of disappointment flashed in Icy Snow's eyes. Although he was spouting nonsense with a straight face, some of his words hit the nail on the head. After all, she was still young and in the prime of her life as a woman. Sometimes it was really lonely and unbearable to be alone in the dead of night. Of course, even so, she could overcome it with her perseverance. She originally planned to keep her husband's chastity for the rest of her life, but unfortunately, she met a devil like Song Qing-shu. Suddenly, she felt her body sinking. It turned out that Song Qing-shu had pressed her down on the bed while she was in a daze. Feeling the man's masculine aura that was full of oppression, her skin became redder and her eyes were about to tear up. She couldn't help but plead softly, "Extinguish the lights." Song Qing-shu shook his head. "How can I appreciate sister-in-law's beauty if I extinguish the lights?" Icy Snow had always been incomparably aloof and always had a gentle and calm look like a good-natured big sister. At this moment, her eyes were misty, exuding a completely different kind of charm and beauty. Moreover, there was a hint of embarrassment and panic between her brows. Song Qing-shu enjoyed the process of her transformation very much. "Don't call me sister-in-law at this time." "Okay, sister-in-law. I told you not to call me that." "Yes, sister-in-law. I told you." "Yes, sister-in-law and uncle." Red waves were flipped over, and tears were dripping from the red candles. Only the mirror on the dressing table silently witnessed everything. The next morning, Xia Qingqing was waiting in the courtyard. When she saw only Song Qing-shu coming out in high spirits, she couldn't help but be taken aback. "Where's Sister Snow?" Song Qing-shu answered with a smile. "She's been too tired recently. Let her have a good rest." Unexpectedly, a strange expression flashed across Xia Qingqing's face. "Big brother Song, Sister Snow has been alone for so long. Don't you know how to take pity on her?" Song Qing-shu was startled and immediately knew that she had misunderstood. The main reason why Icy Snow didn't come out was that she was a little embarrassed and didn't know how to face Xia Qingqing. Thus, she simply stayed in the house like an ostrich. Who knew that Xia Qingqing would think in that direction? But Icy Snow was a mother after all. How could she be tormented so easily? Knowing that Icy Snow was most likely eavesdropping on their conversation behind the door, Song Qing-shu was worried that he would agitate her again. He laughed and pulled Xia Qingqing away. "Let's go." Perhaps it was because they were in the same boat. Xia Qingqing complained along the way. "Big brother Song, it's not that I want to criticize you, but you don't even know that you're like a raging bull sometimes. You're just like someone else's wife. Don't you feel sorry for her?" Song Qing-shu's heart skipped a beat when he heard that. He held her soft little hand. "Don't you like it?" Thinking of some wonderful memories, Xia Qingqing blushed. She didn't dare to discuss this topic with him anymore. She could only change the topic. "Big brother Song, who are you bringing me to see today?" Speaking of serious matters, Song Qing-shu put away his mischievous smile. "Yesterday, I heard from concubine Xiao Zhonghui that she doesn't want to escape on her own. Instead, she wants to clear her name. Since that's the case, we need an important official to help push this matter forward." Xia Qingqing nodded. She naturally knew how dark the Yamen was now. If there was no one to secretly protect and escort them, even if Xiao Zhonghui and the others were fine, they would still be in trouble. "I wonder who Big Brother Song is looking for." Just as she finished asking, her heart suddenly lit up. Could it be the Southern Yard's king, Xiao Feng? Previously at the Golden Snake Camp, Xiao Feng had specially come to help. At that time, Yalu Qi and the others were also there. Moreover, Xiao Feng had always been an upright person. He definitely wouldn't sit idly by when it came to an obvious case of false accusation. "That's right." Song Qing-shu nodded. At this time, the two of them had already arrived near a magnificent mansion. That's the Southern Yard's king's mansion. In fact, Xiao Feng had been overseeing the South for many years on behalf of Liao. The real Southern Yard's king's mansion wasn't in Shanjing City. However, because of his distinguished status, the emperor had built a king's mansion for him in Shanjing City. Previously, Xiao Feng had received news from the laundry brothel that he had hurried back to Shanjing City last night. "This time, my identity is a little more sensitive, so I won't show myself. You can go in by yourself. I believe that with my friendship with Xiao Feng, he will definitely lend a helping hand. After dealing with the matters here, you can go back to the king's mansion by yourself. I still have other matters to deal with." Song Qing-shu quietly instructed Xia Qingqing. Xia Qingqing nodded. She also knew that Song Qing-shu had come here in secret. If he met with Xiao Feng publicly, The news definitely wouldn't be hidden. Then I'll go in. Song Qing-shu waved his hand. Looking at Xia Qingqing's departing figure, he couldn't help but sigh inwardly. The ancient times are good. Even with Xia Qingqing's strong personality, she won't get to the bottom of things. If it was in my previous life, my girlfriend would definitely ask me everything I have to do. Not long after, he once again returned to the Ruyang Mansion stronghold. To his surprise, he found that Zhao Min was still sitting in the pavilion playing the guqin. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. "Princess, you're really in a good mood. You wake up early every morning to play the guqin. When there's a knot in one's heart, playing the guqin relieves it," Zhao Min replied indifferently. Song Qing-shu felt a bit guilty. He didn't dare to ask her what her knot was. After all, he had to deal with a few women. Men naturally felt more guilty about this. He could only obediently sit at the side and listen to her finish playing the guqin. "Did you gain anything last night?" After she finished playing the guqin, it was actually Zhao Min who spoke first. Only then did Song Qing-shu answer. "Last night, I wanted to rescue Wen Fei and the others. Unfortunately, she didn't want to carry the crime and escape. She wanted to wait until the trial was over to prove her innocence." "Childish," Zhao Min sneered. She obviously didn't think much of it. In fact, Song Qing-shu deeply felt the same way. He continued, "Last night, I asked her about Murong Jinghua. She said that there's a person in the imperial palace who has been acting strangely for the past 2 years. Maybe it's Murong Jinghua." Oh, Zhao Min finally became interested. She subconsciously sat up straight. "Who is that person?" Song Qing-shu smiled bitterly. "When I was about to tell me, the guards outside broke in, so I didn't have time to say it." Zhao Min frowned her eyebrows. "That's troublesome." "What's the trouble?" Song Qing-shu was startled. "When it's dark, I'll sneak into Ili Bai Courtyard's prison to ask her." Zhao Min stood up and walked to the pavilion with an elegant fragrance. She looked at Shangjing in the morning mist. According to the latest news, Ili Bai Courtyard has gotten a confession overnight. They found out that Wen Fei, Xiao Zhonghui, and Yuan Guanan are lovers. They also found out that Prince Jin is the illegitimate child of the two. How is that possible? Song Qing-shu was shocked in an instant. Although the two do love each other, there is no improper relationship. And Prince Jin is 100% the Emperor's son. He overheard their conversation before, so he naturally knew the truth. Zhao Min nodded her head. "I guess so. It seems that someone is deliberately framing them." "Not only that, weren't you curious about why the dignified imperial concubine was imprisoned by the people of the Ili courtyard?" "My men found the latest news," Zhao Min continued. "It turns out that the Grand Protector Yelu Chala reported that Yelu Qi and Xiao Ban he colluded to rebel, intending to make Prince Jin the emperor. Before, Yelu Hongji only thought that the two were conspiring to rebel was nonsense. But now that the chain of evidence is complete, how can he dare to take it lightly? What's more," Zhao Min paused and showed a faint smile, "being cuckolded by his own woman, or the throne is threatened. No matter which one it is the emperor's reverse scale. If you touch it, you must die. Now, the people involved may be secretly executed by Yelu Hongji at any time." At this time, in the imperial palace, Prime Minister Xiao Pity of the Northern Mansion and King Xiao Feng of the Southern Courtyard were protecting Yelu Qi and Xiao Ban he from rebelling. Unfortunately, the two kept talking, but Yelu Hongji kept a gloomy face and didn't say a word. In the end, both Yelu Hongji and Yelu Hongji realized something wasn't right. They stopped talking and looked at each other, both seeing the worry in each other's eyes. Only then did Yelu Hongji say in a cold voice, "Someone from their group has already surrendered, revealing all their plans. Yet you two are still speaking up for these traitors." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.